The 5 puppets' hands were like big shovels. Wherever they went, not to mention the red herbs, even a layer of the ground was scraped away. Yun Chujio did not mind. It was more important to put away the red herbs first. She just needed to go back and sort them out slowly. Hei Shinjio only put away the puppets when she was almost done picking them. Yun Chujio summoned her flying spirit tool and got on it. She flew in the direction she came from. She could only inform Prime Minister Sima and the others to come and pick her up after she had confirmed her position outside the valley. This guy estimated that although she had been flying the flying spirit tool with all her might, she should still be in the territory of the South Dragon Kingdom, so there shouldn't be any accidents. This fellow flew the flying spirit tool leisurely, humming a little song with a face full of happiness. This time the lightning struck her spiritual power directly to the 8th level of spirit illusion, so she was naturally very happy. This fellow directly adjusted the hidden spirit ring to the 8th level of spirit illusion. After all, her spiritual power was low now, so she didn't need to hide anything. Moreover, her spiritual power increased a little faster, which could also prove her identity as the Divine Phoenix Emissary. This guy rode the flying spirit tool out of the valley entrance, but he was confused to find that there was a large dense forest below. She remembered that when she came in it was just a grassland. Did she take the wrong way? This guy had an ominous thought in his heart. Could it be that this bullshit Candle Sky Valley was not in the Southern Dragon Kingdom at all? This guy blinked his eyes, took out a disguise pill and swallowed it. It was better to be prepared. Just as Hei Shinjio was thinking about it, the flying spiritual device suddenly sank. This guy's heart was like a dog crying. Could it be that this place also forbade flying? The miserable Hei Shinjio had no choice but to throw a few sticky silk nets at the trees below, which saved her life. She finally broke free from the sticky silk net and landed on the ground. Looking around, there were only trees and trees. She didn't know what exactly this place was. Hei Shinjio had no choice but to determine the direction and ride the giant rabbit to the east. After walking for a while, the fellow looked at his giant rabbit. This thing was too eye-catching, so he kept the giant rabbit and brought out Xiaohong. Yun Chujio looked at Xiaohong. She took out some ink and drew a black flame between Xiaohong's eyebrows. Then she made Xiaohong transform into 2 tails. In this way, Xiaohong disguised herself as a low-level demon beast that was commonly seen in the sky-high continent, the 2-tailed firefox. Yun Chujio saw that there were no more flaws, so she rode on Xiaohong and continued to move forward. After walking for half a day, they finally reached the edge of the forest. However, it was still forbidden to fly, so Yun Chujio could only continue to ride on Xiaohong. After walking for a while, the sound of people walking and talking came from ahead. Yun Chujio's heart moved. Someone was coming. Not long after, she saw a group of people walking towards her. Some of them were riding on spiritual beasts while others were walking. When they saw Yun Chujio, they were all stunned. Yun Chujio could not see through the spiritual power of those people. Apparently, their spiritual power was much higher than hers. Yun Chujio did not want to stir up trouble, so she moved to the side and gestured for those people to go over. Those people looked at Yun Chujio curiously. Seeing that her spiritual power was low, they did not make things difficult for her and walked past her. Yun Chujio was secretly relieved when she heard a man ask arrogantly, "Little girl, what are you doing in the Zhutian forest? Is there anything unusual in the Zhutian valley?" Yun Chujio's heart skipped a beat. Zhutian forest? Zhutian valley? It seemed that these people knew about the existence of Zhutian valley. Did they know about Inyamo? Yun Chujio said with a blank expression, "I came here to pick herbs and didn't go into the depths of the forest, so I don't know if there's anything unusual in the Zhutian valley." Yun Chujio was afraid that people wouldn't believe her, so she took out a few herbs that she picked and shook them. The middle-aged man who asked the question wanted to continue asking, but a man next to him said, "How could a good-for-nothing in the 8th layer of the illusionary realm dare to get close to the Zhutian valley? I guess she is only picking some spiritual herbs outside the forest. Let's go to the Zhutian valley to take a look. The Imperial Preceptor said that there is a big change inside, so we should hurry there. If we delay, I'm afraid the Imperial Preceptor will blame us." Hearing that, the middle-aged man looked at Yun Chujio a few more times. Seeing that Yun Chujio was calm and did not show any guilty expression, he did not ask any more questions. Soon the group of people disappeared. Yun Chujio blinked her eyes. Imperial Tutor? A great change? This guy felt that if those people found out that the Zhutian Valley's enchantment had disappeared, they might suspect her. It was better to escape quickly. Panda N0, VE1. This guy quickly adjusted the level of his spiritual power to level 6 of spirit illusion. He changed his clothes and then took a disguise pill. His appearance changed again. She picked up Xiao Hong and ran out. She had to leave before those people returned, or else she might be in trouble. He Xinjiu risked her life and finally left the forest and arrived at a public road. This guy was slightly relieved. He mixed with the crowd and walked along the public road. After walking for a short while, a few people on wildebeest caught up with him. One of them was the middle-aged man who asked the question. The man came to Yun Chujia's side and stopped his wildebeest to size her up. Seeing that neither her appearance nor her spiritual power was the same as the little girl from before, he did not say anything and let Yun Chujiu leave with the others. Yun Chujiu could not help but sigh in her heart. As expected, one must be careful when using the 10,000-year-old ship. What a close call. While sighing in her heart, the man pondered. The spiritual power of the pedestrians here seemed to be similar to that of the people of the Jingmu kingdom. It seemed that this place should also be a second-class country. However, she did not know which second-class country it was. Yun Chujiu followed the crowd and walked forward. From afar she saw a magnificent city. Yun Chujiu originally thought that she was used to seeing high-rise buildings in her previous life. No city would shock her much. However, the city in front of her still stunned her. The city wall that almost reached the clouds was built from an unknown material. It reflected the light of the sun, making it so dazzling that people could hardly open their eyes. In the middle of the city gate there were 3 magnificent words written: Starry Night City. There were several soldiers guarding the city gate, and every person who entered had to check their identity documents. Starry Night City? Yun Chujia's heart trembled. Starry Night City was the capital of the second-class country, the Star Sun country, and the Jingmu country were both vassal countries of the first-class country, the Jun Tian country. How could she accidentally bump into the capital of the Star Sun country? Yun Chujiu complained in her heart. Of course she could not take out her identity document. Otherwise, there was no way to explain why she had come here when she was clearly in the Southern Dragon country. It was simply asking for trouble. However, if she turned around and went back, those people from before might suspect her. This was really a dilemma. For now, it was safer to sneak into Starry Night City first and then think of a way to leave. However, the soldiers guarding the city were very strict. How could she sneak in? Yun Chujiu blinked her eyes and observed for a while. She realized that not everyone had to be questioned. Some people might have special identities and the servants they brought would not be questioned. They could directly follow their master in. Yun Chujiu rolled her eyes and fixed her gaze on a fat old man. Based on the conversation between the fat old man and the servant, Yun Chujiu had already determined that this fat old man loved money like his life, and he seemed to be very popular in Starry Night City. Yun Chujiu moved closer to the fat old man and said pitifully in a low voice, "Grandpa Jing, I came out in a hurry today and forgot to bring my identity document. Can you bring me in?" The fat old man looked at Yun Chujiu suspiciously. He didn't have any impression of her, but this little girl called him Grandpa Jing right from the start. Obviously she knew him. The fat old man frowned. "No, I don't know you. What if you are a criminal?" "Wouldn't I be a criminal?" "Grandpa Jing, you are a noble who forgets things. I am a rich man. My father said that he owed you 100,000 high-grade spirit stones and asked me to return it to you." As Yun Chujiu said that, she transferred the 100,000 high-grade spirit stones to the fat old man. She thought to herself that even if she didn't know anyone, she should know about spirit stones, right? The fat old man naturally understood that this 100,000 spirit stones was not something he owed. It was the benefit that this little girl gave him. He thought about it again. This little girl was only in the 6th layer of the illusionary realm. Even if she wanted to do something bad, she didn't have the ability to do so. He might as well earn this benefit. Thus, the fat old man's face immediately revealed a kind smile. "Look at my memory. So it turns out that I have a lot of it. Let's go. Grandfather will bring you in. Don't be so careless next time." Yun Chujiu smiled and agreed. She thought to herself that this fat old man had changed his face quite quickly. When it was the time for the fat old man to line up, the soldiers guarding the city did not interrogate his servants and directly let them pass. After entering the city, Yun Chujiu naturally would not follow the fat old man anymore. She found an excuse to separate from the fat old man and his group. This fellow felt that the most important thing now was to find an inn to settle down. Then he would contact Prime Minister Sima and think of a way to return to the East Phoenix country. Unexpectedly, the lodging actually required an identity document. What the fuck? What was so shameful about this starry night city? Why was the investigation so strict? He Xinjiu was troubled. It was fine during the day, but at night she couldn't just wander on the streets, right? Wasn't she waiting to be caught? She rolled her eyes. The fat old man seemed to be an innkeeper. She could make some plans with him. The old man was greedy for money. As long as he had enough money, he wasn't afraid that he wouldn't take her in. Therefore He Xinjiu strolled along the street and finally found the Jing family's inn run by the fat old man. When the fat old man saw Yun Chujio come in, he narrowed his eyes and said with a smile, Duo, what do you want to talk to me about? Grandpa Jing, can I talk to you for a moment? The fat old man blinked his eyes and brought Yun Chujio to the inner room. Tell me. What is it? Grandpa Jing, to be honest, I ran out of the house in a fit of anger with my father, so I don't want to go home to retrieve the identity document. Can you let me stay here for a few days? The fat old man was about to refuse, but Yun Chujio raised 3 fingers. 30,000 upper-grade spirit stones per night. The fat old man's words immediately turned into a kind smile. You child, you're really naughty. Alright, then you can stay here first. Yun Chujio generously transferred 150,000 high-grade spirit stones to the fat old man Grandpa Jing. I'll pay the room fee for 5 days first. If I continue to stay there, then I'll continue to pay. When the fat old man thought about how he had easily earned 250,000 high-grade spirit stones today, he was so happy that he couldn't close his mouth. He generously arranged for Yun Chujio to have a room on the 2nd floor facing the street. Yun Chujio returned to her room to wash up. Just as she was about to take out Prime Minister Sima's voice transmission talisman to study the countermeasures, she heard a commotion on the street outside. Yun Chujio opened the window and looked outside through a crack. She saw many soldiers checking on passers-by and even entering various shops to search. Yun Chujio's heart sank. From the looks of it, it was obvious that she was determined to find her. Although she had disguised her appearance and spiritual power, she did not have an identity document. After checking, she would definitely be exposed. Although that fat old man was greedy, he would definitely hand her over under threat. Moreover, the fat old man was not the only person in this inn. Even if the fat old man wanted to protect her, someone might report her. What should she do? Yun Chujio's forehead was covered with fine beads of sweat. The great void mirror was still in hibernation. Otherwise she could go in and hide. Just as Yun Chujio was hopping around anxiously, the little black bird in the spiritual beast pouch said, Master, why don't you take a rejuvenation pill? After you turn into a child, naturally no one will suspect you. Xiao Hanyo said with a smile. Yun Chujio felt that this method was feasible. It was normal for a young child's family not to give her an identity document. Moreover, no one would associate a child like her with the little girl from before. However, the gigolo only gave her an antidote last time. Although she already knew the prescription for the guai chow, she did not have the few herbs inside, so she had not refined the antidote. If she ate the rejuvenation pill, she would probably have to spend some effort to find the missing herbs. Should she take the rejuvenation pill or not? Yun Chujio saw through the crack in the window that a few people without identity documents were taken away. There were even some who resisted and were killed immediately. Without hesitation, she changed into a set of clothes and swallowed a rejuvenation pill. At this moment, the fat old man's forehead was also covered in sweat. He felt that he had most likely picked up a big trouble. He originally thought that it was just a little girl without identity documents. Who would have thought that she was actually an important criminal of the imperial court? If the person was found in his shop, he would also be implicated. The fat old man gritted his teeth. If it really did not work out, he could only bleed a little. Nothing was more important than his old life. When the time came, he would say that he deliberately left her in the inn in order to stabilize her and was preparing to report her. Right, that was what he was going to do. Just as the fat old man made up his mind and was about to go out to report and make contributions, the hem of his clothes was gently tugged by someone. The fat old man looked down and saw a pretty girl doll looking up at him. Her eyes were curved like a crescent moon. The fat old man was stunned. Where did this little girl come from? She was probably a customer's child. How careless. Such a pretty little girl could easily be abducted by human traffickers. Grandpa, this is the note that sister asked me to give you. The little girl handed a note to the fat old man. The fat old man opened the note in confusion and saw a line of words written on it. I'm leaving. This is the child that I abducted. Do as you see fit. Take the 250,000 high-grade spirit stones as your compensation. The fat old man's heart was like a dog that was crying. For a moment he did not know what to feel. The fat old man was stunned for a moment. On second thought, it was a good thing that the scourge had left so that he would not be implicated. Otherwise, even if he reported it, he might get into trouble. However, what about this little girl? The fat old man lowered his head and looked at the little girl. Was this really the child that the girl had abducted? That was not right. When that little girl came in, she was clearly alone. When did this child come in? The fat old man thought about it again. This little girl was small. Perhaps he didn't notice when she came in? The fat old man bent down and asked little Nine kindly, Little girl, when did you come in? You call that little girl sister? Is she really your sister? Little Nine had an innocent and romantic look on her face. I just came in. Sister bought me candy to eat. I like sister. When the fat old man heard this, he thought for a while. He guessed that the smelly girl had used candy to trick this little girl. She was really wicked. Little doll, where do you come from? Grandpa will send you home. Little Nine bit her finger and looked at the fat old man blankly. My house is a very, very big yard. There are many, many rooms inside. Sob, sob, I want my mother, sob, I want my father. The fat old man immediately felt numb. Although he was greedy for money, when such a delicate little girl cried, it was simply heartbreaking. Moreover, he heard little Nine say that there were many, many yards in the house. That was definitely a rich family. If he sent the little girl back, he might receive a great reward. When the fat old man thought of this, his eyes flashed with a bright light. This was a good opportunity to make a fortune. The fat old man revealed an amiable smile and comforted, Little child, Grandpa will help you find a home. Come, Grandpa will give you candy to eat. When little Nine ate the candy, she immediately stopped crying and said with a smile, Grandpa is really a good person. Grandpa will make a fortune. The fat old man immediately smiled so much that he could not close his mouth. This little girl really knew how to talk. Just as the fat old man was laughing and teasing little Nine, there was a commotion outside. The fat old man's heart tightened, but when he remembered that the little girl had already escaped and was dead without any evidence, the government could not do anything to him. Therefore he carried little Nine out of the inner room. Sure enough, there were soldiers interrogating the employees. The employees in the shop were all trained by the fat old man. Moreover, if something happened to the fat old man, they would not be able to recover. Therefore they answered very carefully and did not say anything. The fat old man saw that the leader was an acquaintance and said with a smile, Boss Lee, why are you free today? What happened? The little leader nodded to the fat old man. The higher-ups asked to search a little girl. Every house must be searched. This is a routine matter. Boss Xing, don't mind. What are you talking about? We are people of Starry Night City, so we naturally have to cooperate with the government. You can search as much as you want. This is a registered customer. You can check it. As the fat old man spoke, he handed the guest registration book to the little leader. The little leader took the book and looked curiously at the little girl behind the fat old man. He asked, Boss Xing, is this little girl your granddaughter? The fat old man smiled and said, She's the child of a distant relative. She asked me to take care of her for a few days. I'll send her back in a few days. The little leader praised her a few times and did not ask any more questions. Then he led the soldiers and began to search the guest room. The fat old man was still a little nervous. He did not know if that smelly girl had really left. If she had not left, he would be in big trouble. Fortunately, the soldiers who were searching quickly came back, indicating that they did not find any suspicious people. Only then did the fat old man's heart relax. He secretly gave the little leader some spirit stones, and the little leader left with his men. Seeing that the situation had calmed down, the fat old man looked at little Nine, who was eating candy, and remembered something. He asked, Little doll, tell Grandpa, is your home in Starry Night City? Little Nine's eyes twinkled. Little Nine's home is very, very far away. There's a lot of money at home. Woo-woo, I want my mother, I want my father. When the fat old man saw that little Nine would cry at the mention of home, He had no choice but to comfort her again. He thought to himself, looks like this little doll's home isn't in Starry Night City. When he entered the city previously, he didn't see this little guy either. Perhaps that smelly girl hid this little guy in someone's car and snuck into the city? Could really be like this. Otherwise, that smelly girl wouldn't have left for a period of time. She probably went to look for this little kid during that period of time. It had to be said that the fat old man's imagination was really strong. He helped He Xinjiu find all the loopholes, but he actually didn't suspect a thing. Instead, he wanted to find out where little Nine's home was by every means possible. He wanted to make a fortune. A trace of craftiness flashed in Zyogia's eyes. This round was over. At this time, the sky had already darkened. The fat old man looked at Xiaojio. Such a little doll probably needed someone to take care of it. He planned to hire a maid to take care of Xiaojio. Of course, Xiaojio did not want a maid to be in the way, so she said softly, "Grandpa, I can wash my face and comb my hair. I can also sleep. Don't spend money to hire people." Although the fat old man didn't believe that such a small person could take care of herself, he was still very happy to save some money. During dinner, the fat old man saw that Yun Chujie was indeed eating well and was very obedient, so he gave up the idea of finding someone to take care of Xiaojio. The fat old man arranged for Xiaojio to be in a room in the backyard, next to his room. If anything happened, he would be the first to know. This was a golden baby, so nothing could go wrong. Little Nine saw the fat old man looking at her like he was looking at a spirit stone, and she couldn't help but laugh in her heart. In fact, people who were greedy for money were quite cute because once they caught their weakness, it was simply too easy to fool them. Little Nine stood on the small stool and washed up for a while, then lay on the bed to think about her next step. Those herbs that were used to refine the antidote would probably take a lot of effort to find. With her small body, she naturally couldn't do it, so she could only let Yun Jichen and Prime Minister Sima help her find it. She took out the voice transmission talisman and was about to send it to Prime Minister Sima when her heart skipped a beat. Why not ask the gigolo if he still had the antidote? If he still had it, he wouldn't need to trouble Prime Minister Sima to collect the herbs. Moreover, once the gigolo came, he could easily bring her out of here. Yun Chujio thought of this and took out Di Baiming's voice transmission talisman. She made a noise and said that if Di Baiming had the antidote, he would send one over to her. If he didn't have the antidote, he could also help her collect all the herbs. To be honest, Yun Chujio was a little nervous. The gigolo was no different from an ice sculpture now. She didn't know if he would care about her life or death. After a while, Di Baiming didn't reply. Although He Xinjiu was mentally prepared, she still felt stifled. He Xinjiu did not sleep well these days, so she fell asleep quickly even though she was frustrated. The next morning, He Xinjiu finally received Di Baiming's reply. There were only 2 dry words. Wait. Yun Chujio pursed her lips. Was he playing with her? This guy did not ask much. He just told her to wait. The fat old man would ask Yun Chujio some questions from time to time. He just wanted to know where her home was so that he could send her back. Yun Chujio's heart skipped a beat. But he was so stupid. Wasn't this a ready-made person that could be used? Why didn't she remember? She could totally make up that she was the child of a big family in the East Phoenix country. As long as she left the Star Sun country, she could meet up with Prime Minister Sima and the others. Just when He Xinjiu was vexed, she heard the fat old man muttering to himself, "I wonder where this little girl is from. As long as she is not from the East Phoenix country, it will be fine." Little Nine blinked her eyes and asked curiously, "Grandpa, what did you say? Why is it fine as long as she is not from the East Phoenix country?" The fat old man was already used to the little girl's sometimes smart and sometimes cute appearance. Therefore, he was not surprised that she would ask such a question. He said in a low voice, "The borders of our Star Sun country and East Phoenix country are tightly sealed. It is impossible to pass through without a document issued by the government. Moreover, I heard that no one is allowed to enter or leave these days." The fat old man could not help but laugh when he said this. He had really lost his mind. Why was he talking about this with a 3- or 4-year-old child? Yun Chujie's heart was shocked. Why did Star Sun country seal the borders for no reason? Could it be that they had a plot? No, she had to remind Prime Minister Sima. Therefore, Yun Chujio took the time to send a voice transmission talisman to Prime Minister Sima to remind him to pay attention to the Star Sun Kingdom's movements. On this day, the fat old man was checking the accounts while little Nine was sitting on the chair with a candy ball in her mouth. She was swaying her calves leisurely. At this moment, the originally noisy room quieted down. Everyone looked at the white-clothed man who walked in from the door. With just a glance, everyone lowered their heads and did not dare to look at the man who looked like a god. The powerful pressure made it difficult for them to breathe. The fat old man was slightly better than the others. Just as he was about to brace himself and ask the man in white if he was staying in the hotel, little Nine jumped down from the chair and ran over. "Daddy! Daddy! You're finally here to pick up little Nine." A certain someone, little Nine hugged a certain someone's thigh and refused to let go. Needless to say, from her current point of view, the pretty boy was even more handsome. He was so handsome that it was almost unbearable to look at. She really had good taste. She had booked this monster early on. Putting everything else aside, their little monkey would definitely look very good in the future. Just as little Nine was thinking happily, she heard a cold and piercing voice coming from above her head. "Let go." Little Nine pursed her lips, as if a basin of ice water was poured on the top of her head. Damn it, she almost forgot that this person was a bastard who had no emotions. Little Nine had no choice but to let go of her claws and looked at a certain venerable pitifully. A certain venerable looked deeply at little Nine and said coldly, "Daddy?" Little Nine bit her finger and said pitifully, "Daddy, I won't make you angry in the future. Don't abandon me." Although the people outside the shop were a little afraid of a certain venerable's imposing manner, when they saw the pitiful little girl, they immediately looked at a certain venerable with disapproval. The spectators were discussing among themselves. "Look at his looks. He actually had the heart to throw away his own daughter. What a scum." "That's right. That little girl is as pretty as jade. If she was my daughter, I would definitely cherish her like a treasure. To have met such a scum of the father, that little girl must have suffered a lot. That little girl just tugged at his clothes and he even made her let go. What kind of person is this? He's simply too cold and heartless." When little Nine heard everyone's discussion, she was laughing in her heart. Alright, she was only so good for nothing. It was also good to tease this gigolo to vent her anger. The fat old man also looked at Dee beaming with disapproval. This person seemed to be quite rich, but with this attitude towards the little girl, he probably wouldn't give him much money. He was really unlucky. A certain venerable's face was calm. He lowered his head to look at the pitiful little Nine and said coldly, "Let's go." After saying that, a certain venerable took the lead to leave the inn. Little Nine chased after him with her short legs and shouted, "Daddy hug. Daddy hug." A certain venerable acted as if he didn't hear her and didn't even turn his head. The onlookers couldn't stand it anymore and started to criticize. "How can you be a father? Your daughter is so young, yet you don't even hug her. Could she be a stepfather? Your daughter is so cute, yet you treat her this way. If you don't want to give her to me, I just happen to want such an ice-cold and cute daughter." A certain someone remained indifferent and continued to walk forward. He just needed to send this troublemaker back to East Phoenix Country safely. He wasn't interested in anything else. At this moment he heard a loud sound behind him, followed by the little girl's heart-wrenching cries. "Woo, Daddy is a bad person. Daddy won't hug me, Daddy doesn't love me anymore." This time the surrounding spectators were filled with righteous indignation. If it wasn't for a certain someone's aura being too strong, these people would have already gone up to beat him up. A certain someone frowned and finally turned around. He saw the little person sitting on the ground with tears streaming down her face. She was crying pitifully. A certain someone hesitated for a moment. He looked at little Nine and said coldly, "Come here." Little Nine blinked her eyes and ran to a certain person's side with her short legs. Then she stretched out her two small arms and said softly, "Daddy hug." The certain person's pupils shrank. Looking at the dust on little Nine's body, he said coldly, "Cleaning spell." Little Nine pursed her lips but still used the cleaning spell. She said pitifully, "Daddy, can I hug you now?" A certain man expressionlessly stretched out his long arm and carried little Nine up. When he turned around and was about to leave, the fat old man finally mustered up his courage and said, "Young master, this old man has taken in your daughter for a few days, and the expenses are not small either. What do you think?" The fat old man did not want to be so explicit in asking for money, but he finally understood that this man had no intention of giving him any money. That little girl had even forgotten about him, her savior. Once she had a father, he could only shamelessly ask for the reward himself. A certain elder didn't even look at the fat old man as he walked forward. Little Nine was lying on a certain elder's shoulder. She waved her chubby little claws at the fat old man. Grandfather, didn't Big Sister give you 250,000 high-grade spirit stones? Or even? The fat old man looked at Little Nine's fox-like eyes and was so angry that he gritted his teeth. Could it be that this little girl wasn't abducted by that smelly girl? Bai Ming saw that the little girl was squatting on the ground and had a worried look on her face. He hesitated for a moment and said, "This venerable one knows a place that might have ghost face orchids. This venerable one will bring you to pick a few of them." The worried look on Xiaoxiao's face disappeared. Her bright smile lit up the entire cabin. She hugged a certain someone's thigh and jumped up and down. "Idol Daddy, I knew you were the best. I love you the most. Let go." A certain someone gently flicked his sleeve and Xiao Xiao fell on her butt. Xiao Xiao. Damn it. She decided to feed all the emotions in her heart to the dogs. Without even looking at Xiao Xiaojiu, who was sitting on the ground, a certain venerable walked out of the cabin. Xiao Xiaojiu stood up, rubbed her little butt and scolded, "Damn it, if I wasn't afraid of teasing you to your old ailment, I wouldn't have been able to tease you to death." The little black bird inside the spirit beast bag secretly said, "Master, with your little body, you can't tease me even if you want to." Xiao Xiaojiu looked at her small arms and legs, looking like she wanted to cry, but no tears came out. Yes, even Xiao Longbao was gone, so why would she flirt with me? Little Nine pursed her lips, rubbed her stomach and said, "Big brother Bei Ming, I'm hungry." There was no reaction. Little Nine stretched her neck and shouted again, "Big brother Bei Ming, I'm hungry." There was still no reaction. Little Nine was furious. As expected, no matter how loud the noise was, it could not wake up a person who pretended not to hear. This fellow rolled his eyes and took out a table from his storage ring. Then he took out a few dishes and stood on the small stool to eat. A certain person heard that something was wrong. He hesitated for a moment and opened his eyes. He saw the little person standing on the chair and grabbing the food on the plate with his hands. His face looked like a small cat. His body was also covered in vegetable soup and rice grains. A certain person frowned and said coldly, "Your body became smaller. Did your brain also disappear? Don't you know how to use chopsticks when eating? Knowing is one thing but doing is another. My fingers are so short, how can I use chopsticks? Why don't you feed me?" Little Nine said righteously. Chapter 3448. Emotionless ice sculpture. As soon as Little Nine finished speaking, she felt the coldness emanating from a certain person. The person said pitifully, "It's fine if you don't want to. I don't usually beg others for things that I can do myself." Little Nine stretched out her fleshy claws to grab the ribs that were furthest away from her. As the distance was too far and her small arms were short, she was practically sprawled on the table. Even the small stool under her feet was on the verge of collapsing. Seeing that Little Nine was about to fall to the ground, a certain someone grabbed Little Nine by her collar and lifted her up. Little Nine immediately struggled like a little bastard. "Put me down, I want to eat meat." "You want to eat back in your own room." A certain someone grabbed Little Nine and directly threw her into her own cabin, then slammed the door shut with a bang. Little Nine, a certain honored guest, returned to his own cabin and saw the mess on the ground. His gaze was slightly cold. He waved his sleeves and even the carpet on the ground was replaced with a new set. Only then did he continue to meditate and cultivate. After a short while, a certain honored guest felt that there was someone peeping at the door. He frowned slightly. He didn't need to look to know that the person peeping was definitely that little rascal. Little Nine, who was peeping through the gap of the door, cursed silently. It was nothing more than a heartbreaker, a scumbag and someone without a conscience. After cursing for a while, she saw that the certain someone was not paying attention to her. She could only take her short legs and return to her cabin. This fellow was so frustrated that she made herself look like a little kitten. She was also unable to get that heartbreaker to feed her. It was as if she had thrown a stone at her own feet. She was extremely depressed. However, very quickly, a crafty look flashed across this fellow's eyes. If you don't feed me, then I'll let you sleep with me." After little Nine had washed her face, she pushed open the cabin door of a certain someone with her short legs. A certain someone finally opened his eyes and looked at her. "What's the matter?" Little Nine staggered a few steps and then pounced on a certain someone. A certain someone wanted to slap her away, but looking at her small body, he reckoned that she would be seriously injured if he slapped her. He could only use his hand to support her. "What are you doing?" "Big brother Baiming, I can't sleep. Sing a lullaby for me," Little Nine said as she blinked her starry eyes. A certain someone's expression turned even colder. "If you can't sleep, then cultivate." Little Nine, damn it. This psychopath wasn't just any ordinary difficult person to deal with. Little Nine pursed her lips, sat down cross-legged next to a certain someone and began to cultivate. Of course, this fellow's intentions weren't in the wine. After a short while his body fell in the direction of a certain someone. Seeing that he was about to lean on a certain someone's body, a certain someone stood up and changed places. The miserable Little Nine fell to the ground with a thud. Little Nine was so angry. She punched the ground a few times with her small fists and pointed at a certain someone with an aggrieved expression. "Are you still human? I'm so young now and you're still bullying me like this." The certain someone acted as if he didn't hear her and didn't even look at Little Nine. Little Nine was instantly discouraged. Talking to an emotionless ice sculpture was simply a waste of time. "Fuck, go to sleep." Little Nine took out a blanket and pillow and fell asleep on the ground. Soon she fell asleep soundly. After a certain someone felt that Little Nine's breathing was stable, he opened his eyes and glanced at her. Then he closed his eyes and continued to cultivate. The next morning Little Nine was alive and kicking again. "Prince Charming, where's the ghost face orchid? How long will it take us to get there?" This guy was too lazy to call him daddy and brother Baiming to tease a certain someone. Chapter 3449. Ghost Face Orchid. It is said that there are ghost face orchids in the Orchid Valley. "We will reach the Orchid Valley in about 10 days, D. Baiming said faintly. Little Nine took out a piece of sugar ball and threw it into her mouth. She asked vaguely, "Then where is the Orchid Valley? Is it dangerous?" The Orchid Valley is in the territory of the first-class country, Juntian country. D. Baiming did not say anything about whether it was dangerous or not. Obviously he felt that there was no need to answer Little Nine's question. Little Nine curled her lips. So what if her spiritual power was high? Sooner or later she would also become powerful. In the next few days, Little Nine provoked a certain someone with different tricks. Unfortunately, the certain someone was not moved at all and allowed Little Nine to play tricks. If it was an ordinary person they would have been discouraged long ago. However, Heishinju was obviously not an ordinary person. This fellow was stimulated by his fighting spirit and was simply not tired of it. On this day they finally arrived at the entrance of the Yulon Valley. Heishinju followed D. Baiming out of the flying spirit tool. When she saw that there were many people gathered in the distance, she could not help but wonder, why were there so many people? Could it be that they were all here to look for the ghost face orchid? Why didn't they enter? At this moment those people's gazes were also looking at D. Baiming and Heishinju. To be exact, they were looking at D. Baiming. Where did this young man come from? Why was his aura so shocking? What surprised them was that they could not see through D. Baiming's cultivation, which meant that this young man's spiritual power was higher than theirs. Especially some of the women who were looking at D. Baiming with infatuation. Such a handsome and noble man was the best choice for their husband. They had come to the Yulon Valley for the right reason. Heishinju was furious when she saw the infatuated gazes of those women. What the fuck, where were they looking at? This was her man. A bunch of shameless flirtatious bitches. If she had known this would happen she would have let the pretty boy eat a disguise pill. What a miscalculation. This guy rolled his eyes and hugged D. Baiming's thigh. "Daddy, hug. Daddy." Disappointment appeared on the faces of those women. So he had already married and had children. What a pity. D. Baiming's gaze was slightly cold as he stared at Little Nine, who was begging for a hug. In the end he still carried her. He was also very surprised to see so many people at the entrance of the Yulon Valley. He had originally planned to pick a few ghost face orchids and leave. He did not expect that there would be complications. What were these people gathered here for? Chapter 3450. The people from Zhongli's hateful palace had also arrived. Princess? Little Nine narrowed her eyes. No wonder the others seemed to be afraid of this woman. So she was the princess of the June Heaven Kingdom? However, this princess was really shameless. When the other women heard that her gigolo was already a father, they knew that it was difficult and retreated. However, this one came forward. Could it be that she wanted the gigolo to divorce his wife and marry someone else? Although Little Nine wanted to curse the princess in her heart, she thought of what she said. He couldn't bear it, she would mess up the big plan. It was better to get the ghost face orchid first. When Little Nine was thinking about it, she heard Dee Biming say coldly, "No need." Little Nine's heart was a little complicated. On one hand, she was satisfied with the cold attitude of a certain lord towards the other girls. On the other hand, she was a little annoyed at the one-track mind of a certain lord. No matter what, she had to get the ghost face orchid first. There was a moment of gloominess on the princess' face, but soon a smile appeared on her face. Since young master is confident, then Ziyu will not disturb you. After Princess Ziyu finished speaking, she did not continue to pester her and returned to her own team. An hour later, the thick fog at the entrance of the Yulon Valley dispersed, revealing the entrance of the valley. Princess Ziyu was the first to walk in, and the people behind her also followed her in. Little Nine whispered into a certain venerable's ear, "Why didn't you agree with Princess Ziyu just now? This way we can save a lot of trouble." A certain venerable was a little uncomfortable with the hot air that Little Nine exhaled. He tilted his head slightly and said, "If you can't find it, just kill them and snatch the ghost face orchid." Little Nine, all right, there was nothing that could not be solved by snatching. Of course, the prerequisite was that you were strong enough. Just as a certain venerable was about to carry Little Nine into the Yulon Valley, another group of people came from the distance. Although Little Nine could not see through their spiritual power, it was clear that their spiritual power was much higher than Princess Ziyu and the others. Little Nine caught a glimpse of the symbol on the lower right corner of their clothes and her heart tightened. The Li Hate Palace? They were actually people from the Li Hate Palace. They were also here for the ghost face orchid? Although the ghost face orchid was precious, the Li Hate Palace could definitely demand it from the June Tiantian Kingdom. Why would they need to personally send people here? Could it be that there were other treasures in this orchid valley? Just as Yun Chujio was pondering, the people from the Li Hate Palace had already arrived in front of them. Their gazes paused on Dee Biming for a moment and did not say anything else. They quickly entered the orchid valley. Dee Biming's eyes were also slightly surprised. After the people from the Li Han Palace had left, he carried Little Nine and entered the Yulon Valley. Once they entered the Yulon Valley, Yun Chujio finally understood the origins of the Yulon Valley. There were all kinds of orchids everywhere. Although the varieties were not particularly precious, they still looked very pleasing to the eye. Dee Biming carried Little Nine and walked for a while. He frowned slightly. He did not expect the Yulon Valley to be so big. If they continued to walk aimlessly, they would probably return empty-handed. Hence he followed the trail of footsteps and chased after Princess Ziyu. Although Dee Biming was carrying Little Nine, his speed was still very fast. He could see Princess Ziyu and the others from afar, but he did not see the people from the Li Hate Palace. However, Dee Biming and Yun Chujio's priority was to pick the ghost face orchid, so they did not pay too much attention to the whereabouts of the people from the Li Hate Palace. Princess Ziyu glanced at Dee Biming, who was walking over, and felt a little pleased. She had rejected him so readily before, but now he was still following them. Chapter 3451 My father's surname is Bei. Princess Ziyu's gaze was infatuated as she looked at Dee Biming, who was approaching her. She had never seen such an outstanding man, especially that kind of unapproachable aura. It made her very infatuated. Even if this man already had a wife and children, she would still want him. As for his wife and this little bastard, she would just find an opportunity to kill them. Although Princess Ziyu was scheming evil thoughts in her heart, the words she said were very understanding. This young master is really a coincidence. We meet again. Why don't we look for the ghost face orchid together? I have many people here and I can help you look after your daughter. Dee Biming nodded slightly. Princess Ziyu immediately let her subordinates carry little Jio, but Dee Biming said coldly, "No need." He Xinjiu was quite satisfied with Dee Biming's actions. If he dared to let others carry her, she would cry for him to see. "May I know how to address you, young master?" Princess Ziyu asked shyly. My father's surname is Bay and his name is Bayu. He's a big fish. It's the kind of fish that can be eaten. But if you don't eat it well you'll get fishy all over. Little Gio said softly. Di Biming's face stiffened and he tightened his grip on He Xinjiu. Princess Siyu felt that the little girl's words had a hidden meaning, and there was a hint of mockery in them. She could not help but feel angry in her heart, and there was a trace of viciousness in her eyes as she looked at little Nine. It would be better to find an opportunity to kill this little bastard in this Yulon Valley, so as to avoid ruining her good deed. Even so, she still said with a slightly red face, Young Master Bay, ghost face orchids usually live in dark and damp places. We found ghost face orchids not far ahead, let's go and take a look. Di Biming hummed and followed Princess Siyu and the others. After walking for about 2 hours they came to a shrub. This place was close to a stream, and there were many withered branches and leaves under the low shrub. This was the most suitable place for ghost face orchids to grow. He Xinju was puzzled. Didn't Princess Siyu say that she had a treasure to look for ghost face orchids? What kind of treasure was it? Just as He Xinju was puzzled, Princess Siyu took out a bead that was emitting a faint blue light. Princess Siyu explained, Young Master Bay, the ghost face orchid is the best at disguising itself. It's very difficult to be discovered by others. However, the blue light emitted by the orchid bead in my hand can easily discover the ghost face orchid. Di Biming nodded indifferently and did not say anything. Princess Siyu was slightly disappointed. This young Master Bay was too cold. It was probably because of the little bastard in his arms. He really deserved to die. Princess Siyu held the orchid pearl in her hand and searched through the bushes. Unfortunately, she did not find anything. Someone sighed, This ghost face orchid is getting harder and harder to find. Could it be that I have to return empty-handed again? Yeah, it's been many years since we found any traces of ghost face orchids. What the hell? Where did those ghost face orchids go? Princess Siyu heard her subordinate's complaints and coughed unhappily. Everyone immediately fell silent. Let's go to the ghost cave and try our luck. Maybe we'll find something there, Princess Siyu said as she glanced at little Nine in Di Biming's arms. Immediately, an elderly woman advised, Princess, the ghost cave is extremely dangerous. Although the ghost face orchid is precious, it's not worth the risk. Let's just forget about it. Princess Siyu said unhappily, Granny Lu, I've made up my mind. You don't have to say it. He paused for a moment and then continued to walk forward. He Xinjiu stopped when she saw the situation. She did not continue to flirt with a certain someone but instead looked at this so-called ghost cave. The ground was very slippery and there were some moss growing on it. There was nothing special about it. Of course, it might be because this was just the entrance and the deeper one went, the more dangerous it would be. Princess Siyu finally calmed down and said gently, Young Master Bay, the reason why this ghost cave is called a ghost cave is because there are many rarely seen ferocious demonic beasts and it is said that it is haunted. Of course, it is very likely that this is just a rumor. People are just trying to scare themselves. Before Princess Siyu finished her sentence, she heard little Nine scream in fear, Ghosts. There are ghosts. The ghosts are coming. Princess Siyu and the others were scared out of their wits and wanted to retreat. However, the tunnel was too narrow. As they pushed and shoved, a few of them squeezed into the tunnel and made a mess. At this moment, everyone heard little Nine say with a smile, Ha, I'm joking with you. Isn't it fun? Chapter 3453 My father is a slave to his wife Princess Siyu and the others almost died from anger. This little girl was really too wicked. She was already scared to death in this ghost cave, but she actually intentionally scared them. She was really crafty. Yun Chujia's smile was extremely bright. She stole a glance at Di Biming's deep eyes and saw that there was actually a hint of a smile in them. She was stunned in her heart, but when she looked again she still looked like an ancient well without any ripples. This fellow curled his lips in his heart. He wanted to laugh but did not. He was not afraid of stifling his internal injuries. Thinking about internal injuries, He Xinjiu thought wickedly. Could it be that this gigolo had sealed his 7 emotions and 6 desires because he could not eat her for a long time? Otherwise, it would indeed be easy to stifle his internal injuries. However, thinking about it, it was really tragic. Fortunately, the lifespan of people in the towering sky continent was more than 1,000 years. she was still considered a young and beautiful girl. Otherwise, it would really be fatal if she did not come to Kueishui from the beginning to the end. After walking for more than an hour, the passage gradually became spacious. In the end, if it were not for the stone walls covering the several hundred feet high place, they would really think that this was a valley and not a cave. However, there was no light source in the cave. Fortunately, everyone had night luminescent pearls on them, so they didn't delay their walk. They found some corpses of demonic beasts one after another. The blood on them had not dried yet. Apparently, someone had just left here. Princess Ziyu couldn't help but ask in surprise, could it be that someone has come in? Who exactly is it? Hei Xinjiu could not help but twitch her lips. Only now did she realize that someone had entered. They were truly stupid. It was rare for Di Baiming to open his mouth and say, "We met people from the Li Hate Palace at the entrance of the valley. These demonic beasts must have been killed by them." People from the Li Hate Palace? Princess Ziyu suddenly raised her voice. What are they doing here? Could it be that they are also here to find the ghost face orchid? If we find the ghost face orchids, we will naturally have to offer them to the Li Hate Palace. There is no need for them to personally come and pick the ghost face orchids, right? No one replied to Princess Ziyu's words because they were also puzzled. Nanny Lu once again advised, "Princess, since the people from the Li Hate Palace are in front, let's go back." Princess Ziyu glanced at the expressionless Di Baiming. "Young Master Bei, what do you think?" Di Baiming did not say anything and continued walking forward. Little Nine said softly, "You can go back now. My father loves his wife very much and will not marry anyone else, so it's useless for you to follow him. Why bother? Let me tell you, my father is a wife slave. He washes his wife's feet, massages her shoulders and massages her legs every day. At night he even sings lullabies to her. He doesn't even want her to walk on her own and carries her around every day." The jealousy in Princess Ziyu's heart grew like poisonous weeds. She had no intention of leaving in the first place. After hearing Hei Xinjia's words, it was even more impossible for her to leave. She was definitely going to take this man. Hei Xinjiu saw that Princess Ziyu still had no intention of leaving. She thought to herself, this can't be blamed on me. I've already let her go. If she still doesn't leave, then she's courting death. Hei Xinjia's attention was on Princess Ziyu, but she didn't notice that when she said those words, a certain honored guest's expression was as cold as ice. He reckoned that if the situation wasn't wrong, he would definitely teach little Jiao a lesson. The deeper they went, the more corpses the demonic beast had. Hei Xinjiu couldn't help but grumble, what a waste. These can all be sold for money. A certain lord's body stiffened. In his memory, this little rascal seemed to have a lot of money. Why was he so obsessed with money? Chapter 3454. When Princess Ziyu heard Yun Chujia's words, her heart was filled with joy. This little bastard's words, did it mean that young Master Bai's family background was not very good? As long as she became her prince consort, she would have countless spirit stones. Who knows, she might even be able to move young Master Bai's heart. When Hei Xinjiu saw Princess Ziyu's face filled with infatuation, she could not help but feel disdain in her heart. Have you never seen a man before? To actually covet her man, how shameless. Fuck, if it wasn't for Guai Chao causing trouble, the gigolo would have long been hers. Monkeys could give birth to several of them. That damned Go Weiba. Guai Chao in his dantian. There were always a few days every month when he had to be scolded. He was already used to it. As he walked, a faint blue light came from the front. It looked similar to the light emitted by Princess Ziyu's pearl. Everyone quickened their steps and soon sounds of fighting could be heard from the front. With the faint blue light, they could see that the people of the Li Hate Palace were fighting with several giant snakes. Heavens! It's a 59th level dark poison giant snake. Princess, let's retreat quickly. Nanny Lu said in terror. The 59th level dark poison giant snake was equivalent to those at the 3rd to 4th level of psychic power. Although there were also people at the 4th level of psychic power among the people Princess Ziyu brought, there were dozens of dark poison giant snakes. They would definitely not benefit from it. Just as Princess Ziyu was hesitating, she heard someone in front of her shout, "Since they are from the Jun Tiantian Kingdom, why aren't you coming over to help? Do you want to leave them to die?" Princess Ziyu did not dare to leave even if she wanted to. Even if she was a princess of the Jun Tiantian Kingdom, She did not dare to offend the Lihan Palace. Princess Ziyu could only leave a few people to protect herself and let the others come forward to help. Di Biming stood to the side with little Nine in his arms and could only watch indifferently. A cold glint flashed across Di Biming's eyes as he coldly asked Princess Ziyu, "There should be ghost face orchids in the imperial palace of your Juntian kingdom, right?" Princess Ziyu did not expect Di Biming to take the initiative to speak to her. She was simply too excited and did not have the time to lie. She honestly said, "Young Master Bei, we have not found ghost face orchids for several years. The ones we picked previously were all given to the Li Hate Palace, so there are no ghost face orchids in our imperial palace." Di Biming frowned slightly. It would have been fine if there were ghost face orchids in the Juntian kingdom's imperial palace. He could just force the Juntian kingdom's emperor to take them out, but the Li Hen palace was a little difficult to deal with. Although his spiritual power was not low now, he still did not have much confidence in forcefully breaking into the Li Hen palace. It seemed that he could only try his luck in the ghost cave. If he really could not do it, he could only go to the Li Hen palace. Just as Di Biming was deep in thought, a giant poisonous snake suddenly crawled towards them quickly. It spat out its scarlet tongue, looking rather terrifying. Princess Ziyu cried out in shock, "You guys, quick, kill it!" Princess Ziyu's subordinates immediately went forward to stop the giant poisonous snake, and the two sides engaged in a battle. Di Biming was still holding on to little Nine as he watched coldly from the side. He had no intention of extending his hand at all. Princess Ziyu's subordinates spent quite a while before they finally killed the giant poisonous snake. However, they looked at Di Biming with disdain. Although this man's spiritual power seemed to be quite high, he was probably just putting on a show. Otherwise, why didn't he extend his hand? He was probably afraid that he would be exposed if he extended his hand, right? Princess Ziyu was also a little displeased. Firstly, he actually only cared about that bastard of his and did not save him. Secondly, he was probably just a flowery pillow and did not have any real abilities. Chapter 3455. What a cute little thing. Princess Ziyu's thoughts suddenly changed a little. The sky-high continent respected the strong. No matter how handsome this man was, he would still be looked down upon by others if he did not have any abilities. Her gaze towards Di Biming immediately became less heated. She had really lost her mind just now. She had actually entered the ghost cave for him. She really deserved to die. After another 2 hours, those giant poisonous snakes were finally killed. The air was filled with the smell of blood. A small leader of the Lihan Palace walked over. He first nodded slightly to Princess Ziyu, then his gaze landed on the spotless Di Biming. He sneered a few times, then said, "This young master is really calm. Our lives were hanging by a thread just now, yet you just watched coldly from the side. Since that's the case, help us scout ahead." Di Biming slightly curled the corner of his mouth. A trace of sternness flashed in his eyes, but he didn't say anything. He lifted his leg and walked forward. It was obvious that he had agreed to scout ahead for everyone. If it was before, Princess Ziyu would definitely put in a few good words for them. But now her thoughts had changed, so she didn't say anything. Instead, she wanted to leave. But that small leader said, "Since we're here, let's go together." Princess Ziyu didn't dare to say anything else and could only follow him. He Xinjiu held Di Biming's neck and her eyes flashed as she looked at Di Biming's eyes. She was a little nervous at first, but when she saw the calmness in Di Biming's eyes, she immediately knew that the gigolo must have used these people to find the ghost face orchid, which was why he didn't kill them. Otherwise, none of these little dregs would be able to live. After walking for a short while, they found a huge nest. There were some demon beast eggs inside, and some of them had already begun to hatch. It was clearly the nest of those giant dark poison snakes from before. No wonder those giant dark poison snakes had come out in full force. They were probably afraid that the people of the Li Hate Palace would harm their young. The people of the Lihan Palace put away those demonic beast eggs and urged Di Biming to continue walking forward. After walking for some distance, they heard the roars of beasts. 2 giant blue demonic tigers blocked their way. He Xinjiu widened her eyes and said in surprise, "What a beautiful kitten. This is the first time I've seen a blue kitten. Daddy, I want to play with them for a while." The 2 blue tigers. Princess Ziyu snorted coldly. "These are level 61 blue tigers, not kittens. You want to play with them? Are you courting death?" Chujio ignored her and looked at the two blue tigers instead. She said softly, "Kittens, run. These people are very fierce. They are not as kind as my father and I are. They will kill you." A trace of confusion flashed across the two blue tigers' huge eyes. This little human girl actually advised them to run? She actually did not want them to be killed? Since that was the case, then she would eat the others first and then her. When the two blue tigers thought of this, they actually bypassed Biming and Chujio, who were at the front, and pounced on the people behind them. Those people felt as if their hearts were going to explode. Were these two giant blue tigers blind? Why didn't they attack the father and daughter? Why did they have to attack them? Heishinjio took out a spirit fruit and said vaguely while chewing, "Daddy, those two kittens look so cute when they fight. I've never seen such a cute little thing." Everyone, cute? Little thing? Damn it, not only were the two giant blue tigers blind, but this little girl was even more blind. Chapter 3456. Blue Bats. Although the two indigo tiger spirit ranks were not low, the Li Hate Palace and the Jun Tiantian Kingdom combined had several dozen people. They were soon at a disadvantage. Little Nine chewed on a fruit as she shouted, "Little things, quickly run or you'll really lose your lives." The two indigo tigers looked at each other and then ran away. The people of the Li Hate Palace, Princess Siyu, and the others did not want to waste time with the demonic beasts, so no one chased after them. The leader of the Li Hate Palace urged Biming to continue exploring. Biming carried Little Nine and continued to walk forward leisurely. The deeper they went, the brighter the blue light became. Heishinji was very curious. What on earth could emit such a strong light? There must be a good treasure. Just as Heishinji was thinking about it, countless black shadows suddenly flew towards them. They were so fast that no one could see what was flying towards them. Biming did not attack those things. Instead, he waved his sleeves to form a spiritual energy shield, protecting him and little Gio within it. Heishinji blinked her eyes and looked at those things that were continuously attacking the spiritual energy shield. Only when she got closer did she see clearly that they were countless blue vampire bats. Their bodies were emitting a faint blue light. Heishinji was shocked. Could it be that the blue light that they saw was emitted by these bats? Heavens, the light was so bright. How many of these bats were there? Princess Siyu and the others had already fought with those bats. From time to time they could hear the screams of cultivators and bats. However, it seemed that these bats alone were not a match for Princess Siyu and the others. As expected, after a fierce battle, Princess Siyu and the others finally killed all the blue bats. However, they had also lost a few people. When they saw Biming and Xiaoxiao's spotless appearance, they were both puzzled and indignant. That man had only formed a spiritual energy barrier, but the blue bats actually did not break through? But that was also true. They had attracted the bats' attention, so he naturally took advantage of them. At this time, Princess Siyu really wanted to retreat, but before she could say anything she was frightened by the little leader's cold gaze and didn't dare to say anything more. In her heart she was angry at Biming. If it wasn't for him, why would she enter this ghost cave on impulse? He and that little bastard deserved to die. This time, Biming did not use his little leader to urge him. He carried Little Nine and continued to walk forward. Not long after, another group of blue bats flew over. Just like before, Biming still maintained his spiritual energy barrier and calmly watched the show from the side. After Princess Siyu and the others fought, a few more people died and were injured. Princess Siyu did not care whether she was afraid or not. She said with a sharp voice, "No. Those blue lights in front must be emitted by these blue bats. If we continue to move forward, we will die. I want to go back." Those people from the June Heaven Kingdom did not want to move forward for a long time. When they heard Princess Siyu's words, they wanted to protect Princess Siyu and retreat. The leader of the Lihan Palace sneered, "Princess Siyu, if you leave now, I guarantee that you will be expelled by the imperial family tomorrow, and your followers will also be wiped out." Princess Siyu and her followers felt a chill in their hearts. They absolutely did not doubt the words of the leader. Although the June Heaven Kingdom was a first-class country, if the Li Hate Palace blamed them, the emperor would definitely sacrifice them. Even if Princess Siyu was a princess, they would also be abandoned. Chapter 3457. Blue Glaze. Princess Siyu was being threatened, She could only say hesitantly, "My lord, it's not that I don't want to serve the Hate Palace. It's just that there are so many blue bats. I'm afraid we won't be a match for them. Moreover, will there be ghost face orchids here?" The leader sneered, "Who says we're looking for ghost face orchids? There's no need for you to say anything. Just follow us. If we succeed, there won't be any lack of benefits for you." At this moment, Princess Cu naturally did not dare to say anything else. She hesitantly agreed. Di Biming slightly frowned. If there were no ghost face orchids here, wouldn't he have wasted all his efforts? However, if they could obtain what the Hate Palace was looking for, it wouldn't be too bad. Perhaps they could use it to exchange for ghost face orchids. After a few more waves of blue bat attacks, nearly half of the people were killed or injured. Only then did they arrive at the end of the ghost cave. Everyone was stunned by the magnificent scene before them. They did not know what kind of or the stone wall was made of, but it was emitting a faint blue light. Countless ghost face orchids were attached to the stone wall. Under the blue light, they looked like they were made of glass. The leader of the Hate Palace was ecstatic. "We found it. We finally found it. This is the blue marble. Quick, cut these blue marble carefully and take them away." Blue marble? Hei Xinjiu blinked her eyes. She had never heard of it and did not know what it was used for. Could it be that it was just because of its good looks? Di Biming's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. He knew about the blue marble, but he did not expect that there was such a thing in the towering sky continent. The blue marble had a special effect, which was to dispel the inner demons and prevent cultivation deviation. The blue charm glaze could be said to be a treasure to those with profound cultivation. The more profound the cultivation, the harder it was to dispel the inner demons. With this blue charm glaze, one could at least prevent one from going berserk. However, Di Biming had no interest in this blue charm glaze. He was only interested in the ghost face orchid that was attached to the blue charm glaze. He said indifferently, "I need some ghost face orchids. I'll pick a few and you guys can cut the blue charm glaze." The reason why Di Biming said this was because he didn't want to cause trouble for no reason. After he obtained the ghost face orchids, he could send this little rascal back to the East Phoenix Kingdom. This way he could go back to his own matters. Who would have thought that the little leader of the Hate Palace would sneer again and again? "You want the ghost face orchids? With just you." Chapter 3458, Shadow Transmission Stone. The little leader and the others were stunned. This man was actually so strong? However, at this point they could only fight to the death. The little leader shouted in exasperation, "What are you all standing there for? Tack together. Kill him." Everyone charged towards Di Biming. Princess Ziyu's heart was very complicated. She was filled with regret and hatred. She looked at little Nine who was picking the ghost face orchid. As long as she caught this bastard, that man could only surrender obediently. Hence, she took advantage of the moment when Di Biming was surrounded by everyone and leaped towards little Nine. Before her foot landed on the ground, an ice arrow pierced her forehead. She tried her best to look to the other side and saw that most of the people had already died. Even those who were still struggling on the brink of death would not be able to escape the fate of death. At this moment, Princess Ziyu truly regretted it. If she had known this would happen, she would have left when that little bastard told her to leave. One wrong step, one wrong step. The head of the Hate Palace was buzzing. It was over. None of them would survive today. If she had known this would happen, she would have let this man pick a few ghost face orchids. While the head was in a daze, the rest of the people were all killed by Di Biming. He gritted his teeth. Even if he did not survive today, this man and that little bastard would not be able to live. He took out a dark black stone from his storage ring and held it in his hand. When Di Biming saw the stone, his heart trembled. Almost instantly, a mask appeared on his face, then an ice arrow shot into the little leader's forehead. Di Biming struck the stone with his palm and instantly the stone turned into powder. When little Nine heard the sound, she turned her head and saw the black powder flying in all directions. She couldn't help but ask curiously, "Male god, what is that thing?" Di Biming took off the mask on his face and said with a cold voice, "Shadow stone." Before he died, he probably already teleported the situation here back to the Hate Palace. However, it's a good thing that there's only your back. Moreover, my true body also put on the mask at the first moment, so I shouldn't have teleported my true Bodhis appearance over. However, it's not good to stay here for long. The people of the Li Hate Palace will soon send people to the valley entrance to intercept us. We must leave as soon as possible. Yun Chujio nodded. She released 5 puppets to help her pick the ghost face orchids. These things were hard to come by, so she had to get more of them. Finally, she managed to pick most of the ghost face orchids on the stone wall. This fellow took out a large kitchen knife and began to cut the blue-colored glass. Since this thing was something the hateful palace wanted, it must be something good. They couldn't let it go to their advantage. When Di Biming saw Yun Chujio chop at the blue-colored glass, he didn't say anything. Although time was of the essence, it wasn't too late. Moreover, this blue-colored glass was very rare, so it was fine to get some. When he saw that little Nine was having a hard time, he simply took the large kitchen knife from her hand and helped her chop. Very quickly, the two chopped off a large piece of blue-colored glass and left the ghost cave. After carrying Yun Chujio out of the Orchid Valley, Di Biming rode on his flying spirit tool and sped towards the East Phoenix country. He Xinjiu could not wait to refine an antidote for the rejuvenation pill. Just as she was about to eat it, she heard a clank coming from the cabin next door. He Xinjiu was stunned. What was the pretty boy doing? She ran over with her short legs and saw Di Biming lying on the ground with a pale face. Although there was no ice on his body, his lips were still frozen until they turned blue. Chapter 3459 was actually Meilong Glaze. Yun Chujio helped Di Biming sit up and asked, "Prince Charming, what's wrong? Didn't you seal your 7 emotions and 6 desires? Why is the cold poison still acting up?" Di Biming's expression was still calm as he said coldly, "I don't know why, but the cold poison in my body suddenly acted up, and it's even more powerful than before." Yun Chujio frowned. It was even more intense than before? Could it be that something had triggered the thing in his body? Could it be the blue marble or the ghost face orchid? In order to verify her thoughts, Yun Chujio took out a ghost face orchid and waved it in front of Di Biming. Di Biming did not have any special reaction, but when Yun Chujio took out a piece of blue marble, Di Biming's face suddenly turned even paler. Clearly, the blue marble was the culprit. Yun Chujio quickly put away the blue marble. This thing could actually trigger the cold poison in the gigolo's body? When she thought about how the people of the Li Hate Palace wanted to take the blue marble, could it be to deal with the gigolo? She shook her head. How was this possible? Even the gigolo himself didn't know that the blue marble would affect him, so how could the people of the Li Hate Palace know? It must be a coincidence. However, fortunately, she had completely cut down the blue marble in the ghost cave. Even if the people of the Li Hate Palace really wanted to harm the gigolo, there was no way they could obtain it. Di Biming's eyes surged with emotions as he tightly clenched his fists. After a moment, his eyes regained their calmness. He said indifferently, "Although the blue charm glaze has triggered the cold poison, it has already been suppressed by this main body. There won't be any major problems. You can rest assured." Yun Chujio looked at Di Biming, whose face was as pale as a sheet of paper. She curled her lips slightly and said, "Don't you feel guilty saying this? Let me ask you, how much spiritual power do you have left? Don't tell me you don't have any left?" Di Biming was silent for a long while and then said with a slightly bitter tone, "Less than 1%. Yun Chujio, this was not a big deal? Did he really think she was a 3-year-old child? Just as He Xinjiu was silently complaining, she was shocked. She ran to the observation window and saw several flying spiritual artifacts flying over, obviously trying to force them to land. Yun Chujio's heart sank. The people from the Palace of Hatred had arrived so quickly? It shouldn't be. At this moment, a shout came from one of the flying spirit tools. "Land immediately and accept the official's identity verification. Otherwise, don't blame us for being impolite." Official's identity verification? It must be someone from the Juntiantian Kingdom. It must be an order from the Palace of Hatred. After all, they were in the Juntiantian Kingdom, so the people from the Juntiantian Kingdom could rush over immediately. However, what should they do next? It was definitely impossible to escape. If the pretty boy's cold poison had not taken effect, he could have easily dealt with these people. If they resisted now, they would be courting death. However, if they landed, they would not have any identity documents. Yun Chujio looked at her small arms and legs. Not to mention her current condition, even if she took the antidote, she would not be able to defeat so many people. What should she do? Yun Chujio stared at her little paws and her eyes lit up. She immediately ran to Di Biming and stuffed a pill into his mouth. Di Biming was caught off guard and swallowed the pill. He asked in confusion, "What kind of pill did you give me?" Yun Chujio didn't say anything. She just gloated at Di Biming. Chapter 3460 Debao and Xiaobao. Yun Chujio ignored him and took out a transfiguration pill and swallowed it. This guy thought about it and felt that it was still not safe. He took out the antidote for the rejuvenation pill and gently bit it. This guy thought about it and gave Di Biming another transfiguration pill. A moment later there was only a little boy and a little girl left in the cabin. Both of them looked like they were only 5 or 6 years old. The little boy was stunned. Di Biming stared at his small arms and legs. The cold air emitted from his body was even colder than the cold poison. He looked at Yun Chujio coldly. "What do you want to do?" Yun Chujio said softly, "If I don't do this, how can I hide from them to check my identity? Later you will say that we have encountered bad people. In order to protect us, our parents lured away those bad people. If we ask you about your identity, you will cry. Do you hear me?" Although Di Biming was so angry that smoke was almost coming out of his head, he knew that this was also a solution. Anyway, he had the antidote in his hands. Once he was out of danger, he would just take the antidote. Perhaps because his body had become smaller, Di Biming felt that the influence of the cold poison had weakened a lot. Although his spiritual power was still very weak, at least he would have no problem walking. Yun Chujio took her short legs and controlled the flying spirit tool to land on the ground. Then she was led down the flying spirit tool by Di Biming. The people from the Juntian kingdom were stunned when they saw the two little kids. "Where are your parents?" Di Biming said with an indifferent expression, "We met some bad people on the way. In order to protect us, our parents lured those bad people away." Yun Chujio saw Di Biming's calm expression and cursed in her heart. He couldn't even act. He was so stupid. She pursed her lips and hugged Di Biming's waist. She pinched him hard on the waist and started sobbing. "Brother, I'm scared. I want father, I want mother." Sob. Di Biming was pinched so hard that his mouth twitched. He finally realized that his expression was too calm. In order to cover it up, he had to lower his head and remain silent. The people from the Juntian kingdom sized up the two little ones. Then they thought of the orders from above. A cold man and a 3 or 4-year-old little girl. These two were obviously not of the same age. Moreover, the little boy's face was pale. It seemed that he was seriously ill. It was impossible for these two little kids to be wanted criminals. The leader frowned and said, "What are your names? What are your parents' names? Do you still remember where your home is?" Little Nine gave Di Biming a look. Di Biming squatted on the ground with a pale face. His forehead was full of bean-sized beads of sweat. Little Nine cried again, Big brother is sick. Big brother is called Debao and I am Little Bao. We are both 5 years old, Sabubi." One of the subordinates approached the leader and said, "Boss, I think these two are too young. They look like twins. Even if you ask them, you won't be able to get anything out of them. Didn't they say that their parents lured the enemy away? Maybe they will come and look for them in a while. Besides, the capital is not far ahead. After they enter the city, there will naturally be people who will pity them and help them. We have important matters to attend to, so it's better to ignore these two little kids. Otherwise, if the higher-ups blame us, our lives will be in danger." The leader nodded and then said to the two little ones, "In order to catch the important criminals, the entire Juntian kingdom is prohibited from flying. A few miles south is Yongli City. Go into the city and ask for help." Di Biming struggled to stand up and nodded his head. Little Nine said in a childish voice, "Thank you. You're really good people." The officers and soldiers were amused by Little Nine's words. They gave a few more instructions and then left. A certain person's face was still expressionless, but he did not shake off Hei Xinjia's claws. He held her hand and walked out of Yongli City. The city of Yongli City was even more magnificent than Starry Night City. Its size was comparable to 5 or 6 Starry Night cities. There were many soldiers guarding the city gate. They strictly checked everyone's identity documents. Occasionally they would meet a handsome man or a 3 or 4-year-old girl, and they would be detained and interrogated strictly. Yun Chujio silently gave herself a 360-degree like without any blind spots, and then looked at a certain person next to her proudly. A certain person was still expressionless, as if he did not see her gloating. Hei Shinjio silently pinched him and said in a low voice, "Act well. Is there a little bun with a cold face like you?" Although Di Biming was reluctant, he had no choice but to restrain his aura. Outsiders might feel that this little boy was too cold, but they would not be too surprised. Chapter 3462 had a hint of cuteness. Yun Chujio had adjusted her spiritual power to the 8th layer of the spiritual venerable realm when she landed on the flying spirit tool. As for a certain one, he had also adjusted his spiritual power to the 8th layer of the spiritual venerable realm with a secret technique. The two of them held hands and arrived at the city gate. The soldiers guarding the city gate glanced at the two little ones. "Kids, where are your parents?" Yun Chujio pouted. "We got separated from them. An uncle told us to go into the city and wait for them." A few soldiers looked at the two little ones suspiciously. They looked to be about 5 or 6 years old, and their spiritual power was at the 8th layer of the spiritual venerable realm. They seemed to be quite talented and their clothes were very exquisite. They should be children of big families. They didn't want to offend people, so their tone was quite good. They asked, "What uncle?" "Just like you guys, he's also a soldier. However, his clothes are purple and there's a mole on his chin. It seems like people call him Leader Zhang," Little Nine said softly. The soldiers looked at each other when they heard that. Leader Zhang was the commander of the royal guards. Since Leader Zhang had specifically instructed these two little dolls to enter the city, perhaps these two little dolls really had some background. Therefore, the soldiers did not continue interrogating. They waved their hands and let the two children enter Yongli City. A certain lord's eyes flashed. When this little scoundrel lied, he did not even blink his eyes. However, it made people feel that he was a little cute. He must have lost his brain because his body had become smaller. That must be it. Hei Shinjio did not know what the certain someone was thinking. When she saw the bustling scene in the city, she immediately threw her worries to the back of her mind. Especially when she saw the snacks on both sides of the road, she could not walk anymore. The certain someone looked speechlessly at Little Nine, who had bought a huge pile of snacks. Hei Shinjio held a candy man and ate as she walked. She smiled and asked a certain someone beside her, "Brother, try this. It's so sweet." A certain person looked at her indifferently and did not say anything. Hei Shinjio curled her lips. She did not know how to enjoy life at all. If she did not want to eat, then so be it. Hei Shinjio still wanted to go to the restaurant to have a big meal, but she was stopped by a certain person. "Don't cause trouble. Let's find a bigger inn to stay in. Don't go out too much in the future." Although Hei Shinjio was unwilling, she knew that Di Biming was right. It was better to keep a low profile. The two little ones finally chose a big inn and asked for a superior room to stay in. Although the owner of the inn was surprised to see only the two little kids, he thought that their parents would come soon, so he didn't say anything. This was also the reason why Di Biming and Yun Chujio chose the large inn. The owner and staff of the large inn were well informed and wouldn't be surprised. If they chose a small inn, they might get into trouble. The two little ones naturally did not want 2 rooms. At night, after Little Nine washed up, she climbed onto the bed. Then she saw a certain someone take out a futon and sit cross-legged on the ground to meditate. Little Nine pouted. "If you want your cold poison to be bad, you can meditate on the ground tonight. I'm not a tiger, do you have to be so afraid of me? You don't even dare to sleep on the same bed as me? Besides, with your small body, I have no interest in doing anything." A certain venerable's body stiffened. He stood up and looked at Xiao Xiaojiu coldly. "If you continue to speak without thinking, venerable, humph. What about you? Let me tell you, pretty boy, your fate is in my hands now. If you make me unhappy, I'll make you a little bun for the rest of your life." Hei Shinjio said proudly. Chapter 3463 Miss Ming will treat you again tomorrow. A certain venerable looked at Hei Shinjio, who was so proud that she forgot herself. He said coldly, "My fate is in your hands?" Hei Shinjio straightened her back and said proudly, "Of course. If I don't give you the antidote, you can only do this. Why don't you come over and serve me well?" Hei Xinjia's heart was filled with joy. At first she thought that turning over a surf and singing would be very far away. She didn't expect that she would have such a good opportunity by accident. If she didn't take the opportunity to torture the gigolo, she would regret it for the rest of her life. Little Gio, you seem to have made a mistake. Even if my spiritual power is less than 1% now, it's still more than enough to deal with you. If you don't believe me, let's try. A certain venerable looked at Hei Shinjio coldly. She could be frightened by a few words, then she would not be Hei Shinjio. Although this fellow's heart was beating a little, he still said arrogantly, even if you are stronger than me now, you have the frost poison. If you use your spiritual power, the frost poison might be even more serious. You won't take the risk, right? A certain man walked to the bedside and looked at Hei Shinjio indifferently. Disrespectful people never get threatened. If you don't believe me, you can try. Hei Shinjio calculated in her heart. Although this gigolo's face was a little pale, he seemed to be all right. Should she stir up a hornet's nest or not? While this guy was hesitating, a certain man was already lying on the outside of the bed. He put away the luminous pearl and said coldly, "Go to sleep." Hei Shinjio blinked her eyes and decided to test him. Therefore she reached out her chubby little claws and grabbed a certain man's hand by his side. Feeling the warmth in her palm, the certain hand hesitated for a moment and did not make a sound. It also did not shake off Hei Xinjia's little claws. In the darkness, Hei Shinjio curled the corners of her lips proudly. Then she rubbed and rubbed into the certain hand's embrace. Alright, although the two little ones were about the same size now, Hei Shinjio somehow felt a sense of security. A certain body stiffened for a moment and said after a long while, "Aren't you afraid that you will catch a cold because of the cold air on my body?" Hei Shinjio said indifferently, "I'm not afraid. Have you forgotten? I have the 10,000-year-old fire marrow on me. I even hugged you in the fallen god abyss last time." A certain body suddenly recalled some memories and the tip of his ears immediately turned red. He did not know if the 7 emotions and 6 desires that had been sealed had loosened, but the cold poison in his body instantly showed signs of worsening. Yun Chujio also felt the changes in Di Biming's body, and she did not dare to say anything more. Damn it, she did not say anything, so how did she get sick from flirting? She was simply wronged to death. However, Hei Shinju thought of the fallen god abyss and remembered that the Guai Chao was able to attract the cold poison in Di Biming's body. Without saying anything, he kissed a certain being. A certain Jiu was struggling with the cold poison in his body. Who would have thought that Yun Chujiu would kiss him secretly? Almost in an instant, something jumped into Yun Chujiu's dantian from Di Biming's body. Yun Chujiu was delighted. Looks like that thing didn't learn its lesson and was successfully seduced by Guai Chao again. Di Biming also felt it, so he didn't push Yun Chujiu away. However, a certain Jiu almost bit a certain Jiu's lips until they were swollen, but he didn't gain anything from it. This fellow could only give up dejectedly. He stretched out his small claws and patted a certain Jiu's face. He said slyly, "Forget it, I don't think there will be any effect today. I'll treat you tomorrow." Another 2 days passed and everything was peaceful. Under the suppression of Di Biming, Hei Xinjiu also gave up the idea of going out for a stroll. On this day, the two little ones were cultivating in the room when the sound of footsteps came from outside the door. Yun Chujiu and Di Biming looked at each other. Both of them were shocked. Who is it? Could it be that it was coming for them? The sound of footsteps stopped at their door. Yun Chujiu's heart tightened. Was it really coming for them? At this moment, the door was pushed open. The inn owner said with a smile, "Two little guests, Leader Zhang is here to see you." Yun Chujiu saw the people beside the innkeeper and her heart thumped. It was actually the person who had intercepted her and the pretty boy's flying spirit tool. What was he doing here? Could it be that he was suspecting them? Chapter 3465. What was she going to do? Although Yun Chujiu was bewildered, she revealed a pleasantly surprised expression on her face and said softly, "Uncle, is there any news about our parents?" Leader Zhang glanced at the two little guys. He sighed and said, "When we were on a mission, we happened to find the remains of a flying spirit tool and some bones that were gnawed by demonic beasts. I'm afraid that your parents are in grave danger." Yun Chujiu, Di Biming. Yun Chujiu was the first to react. She hugged a certain someone and cried loudly. As she cried, she secretly pinched a certain someone. "Brother, we've become orphans." Sobbed, "Brother, we don't have a home anymore." A certain someone did not know what crying was. Even if Yun Chujio pinched him until he was in pain, he only lowered his eyes. There was still no sadness on his face. However, in the eyes of Leader Zhang and the others, the appearance of a certain deity was automatically imagined by them. This child was probably still unable to accept the fact that his parents had passed away for a short period of time. That was why he had a blank look on his face. Leader Zhang sighed in his heart. He originally did not like to meddle in other people's business. However, when he saw the remains of the flying spirit tool, he remembered what Little Nine said about him being a good person. Therefore, after he returned, he sent someone to find the place where the siblings were staying. After coming over for a while, Leader Zhang saw that Little Nine had calmed down a little. Then he asked, "Although your parents have passed away, there must be other relatives in the family. Where is your home? We'll send someone to send you back." Hei Xinjiu pursed her lips. "Father and mother have passed away, so we don't have a home anymore." Bobi sobbed, "Sobi, we have nowhere to go." Leader Zhang frowned. "No home? Could it be that something had happened to their family in the first place, which was why their parents had taken them away? Then the person who had tried to kill them might not be a rogue cultivator but a fight within the family." Leader Zhang imagined a fierce and cruel civil war in the family, and he looked at the two little ones with even more pity in his eyes. He said, "Since you have nowhere else to go, there is a child welfare bureau for orphans in the city. Why don't you go there? Staying in an inn is not a long-term solution." Hei Xinjiu thought to herself that she would not go to the child welfare bureau, but she could not reject it openly. The guy cried and said, "No, we will wait for father and mother here. They will definitely come to us. They will not die." Leader Zhang tried to persuade them again. Seeing that Yun Chujie was crying and refusing to go, he had to give up. "Forget it. Since you are not willing to go, I will not force you. You can stay here for now." Yun Chujie moved to Leader Zhang's side and sweetly asked, "Uncle, where are you taking us?" Leader Zhang's face was slightly smug as he said, "The Hateful Palace wants to recruit Inner Palace disciples. Inner Palace disciples are different from ordinary Hateful Palace disciples. Inner Palace disciples are nurtured by the Hateful Palace from a young age, and their status is higher than other disciples. Inner Palace disciples are only recruited once every 5 years. This is a once-in-lifetime opportunity. Originally, you didn't have parents, so you were unable to provide proof of identity. Logically speaking, you don't have the qualifications to participate in the selection. However, with this commander vouching for you, you don't have to worry about this problem." After saying this, Leader Zhang looked at Little Nine with a face full of anticipation. His meaning was obvious. "Quickly thank me. Quickly praise me." Yun Chujie's heart was like a beeping dog. Who the fuck wanted to participate in some Inner Palace disciple selection? However, when she saw the excited faces of the children around her and the ecstatic expressions of their parents, she could only swallow her words of reluctance. In the hearts of everyone, the Li Hen Palace was supreme. It was a place like a fairyland. If she rejected it, it would definitely arouse the suspicion of others. Moreover, she was only going to register. When the time came, she would just have to think of a way to make her and the gigolo lose. Thinking of this, Hei Xinjia's face was filled with gratitude. "Uncle, thank you so much. You're really a good person." When Leader Zhang heard Little Nine's praise, he was very gratified. This was a piece of cake for him, but it could change the lives of these two children. He felt that he was great. Of course, Leader Zhang also felt that although these two children were young, their aptitude seemed to be quite good. Moreover, they were intelligent and quick-witted. If they were chosen by the Li Hate Palace, they might be able to borrow some strength in the future. Heavens, if he could connect with the Li Hate Palace's inner sect, then his future would be limitless. Leader Zhang then brought people to other inns in the city to gather children of the right age. Finally, he brought them all to the divine hall of the Juntiantian kingdom. By the time Yun Chujio and the others arrived, many children had already gathered in the square of the divine hall. They were presumably children of noble families and ordinary people. The children were chattering excitedly. Clearly, they all felt that this was a good opportunity to soar to the sky. At this moment, Emperor Xian Huan and the imperial preceptor of the Juntiantian kingdom walked over. The square instantly fell silent. Yun Chujia's calculations were quite good, but she had not expected that the method of the Imperial Preceptor's primary selection would actually be judging a person by their appearance. Although Yun Chujio and Di Baiming had already taken the transfiguration pill, their looks were still very outstanding among these children, so they had passed the primary selection just like that. He Xinjia's heart was like a dog that was bawling. This was also possible? Could it be that the first requirement to become a disciple of the Li Hate Palace was to be good-looking? Appearance alone eliminated nearly half of the children, and then the Imperial Preceptor eliminated the children with low spiritual power. As a result, there were less than 50 children left in the square. The Imperial Preceptor looked at the remaining children and pondered for a moment before saying, "Introduce yourselves one by one, and tell me the reason why you want to enter the Li Hate Palace. Only 20 of you will be able to enter the next round of the selection." Hearing the Imperial Tutor's question, Yun Chujia was immediately assured. This was easy. In a while, her answer would guarantee that she would not be selected. The children answered one by one. As for why they wanted to enter the Lihan Palace, it was simply because they wanted to be loyal to the Lihan Palace Master and wanted to become stronger. He Xinjiao and Di Baiming were ranked last. Therefore it was He Xinjia's turn. After quite a while, He Xinjiao sniffled and cried, "Wu, my name is Xiao Bao and my brother is De Bao. Our father and mother were killed by someone." Wu, Leader Zhang, who was standing aside, gritted his teeth in anxiety. This little girl was usually very smart. Why was she crying now? It was over. He was definitely not going to be chosen. The state preceptor's expression did not change much. He looked at Di Baiming, who was standing beside Yun Chujio, and said, "It's your turn. Go ahead." Di Baiming lowered his head. Even if he was beaten to death, he did not want to say his stupid name like Debao. Therefore he said 5 words stiffly, "Listen to my sister." When Leader Zhang heard that, he was instantly discouraged. These 2 little dolls were definitely going to be eliminated. It seemed that they did not have a rich and noble life. When the state preceptor saw that all the children had finished answering, he began to distribute the jade tokens in his hands. The children who received the jade tokens would mean that they had passed the selection. Therefore he looked at the state preceptor with eager eyes. He Xinjiao knew that she and Di Baiming could not be selected at all, so she did not even bother to look at the national master. She thought to herself that since she had already left the inn today, she could go to the restaurant and have a big meal. The pretty boy did not agree. She would cry for him to see. Just when she was feeling happy, she heard the national master's voice from above her head. "Take this. This is your jade token." Yun Chujio looked up in confusion, only to see that the Imperial Tutor still had 2 jade tokens left in his hands, which were obviously hers and Di Baiming's. This guy's heart was as mad as a dog. But she was crying like an idiot just now and she was actually chosen? Was this Imperial Tutor blind? Seeing her in a daze, the Imperial Tutor thought that this little girl was happy silly, so he stuffed the jade token to her, and then handed the remaining jade token to Di Baiming. A certain figure was also in a daze, but he was obviously calmer than He Xinjiao. He took the jade token indifferently. The Imperial Preceptor asked the servants to take the children who had been eliminated out. A few children gathered their courage and questioned, "Imperial Preceptor, that little treasure was crying." That Debao only managed to squeeze out 5 words. They didn't even give a reason to join the Li Hen Palace. Why were they chosen? He Xinjiao secretly agreed when she heard this. What a good question. That's right. Why were they chosen? They didn't want to be chosen at all right? The national master glanced at the children who had been eliminated and said in a calm tone, because what they said was the truth, the truest thought in their hearts. Their parents were killed by a rapist, so they have enough motivation to cultivate properly. Moreover, the brotherly and sisterly love is quite rare. Yun Chujio, there was something that she did not know whether to say or not. Which fucking eye of yours could tell that they were speaking the truth? When those children heard the Imperial Preceptor's words, they were instantly rendered speechless and brought out dejectedly. Leader Zhang, on the other hand, was very happy. He did not expect that the 2 children had actually passed the selection by accident. Although there were still many rounds of selection to come, these 2 children had survived a great disaster and would definitely have good fortune in the future. Perhaps they would really be chosen. Just as Leader Zhang was thinking about it, the Imperial Preceptor said to him, Leader Zhang, escort these children to the Li-Hate Palace. Don't let anything happen to them. Leader Zhang respectfully acknowledged and then brought the 20 children out of the divine hall. Yun Chujie was calculating in her heart. It was said that the Juntiantian kingdom was hundreds of thousands of miles away from the Li-Hate Palace. She could just find an excuse to escape on the way and use this opportunity to escape. When this fellow thought of this, his mood immediately became much better. He even walked briskly. Di Baiming keenly sensed the change in He Xinjia's mood and frowned slightly. However, he quickly guessed Yun Chujie's thoughts. He also felt that this was a good opportunity to escape, so his slightly furrowed brows also relaxed. However, when he and He Xinjie saw the thousands of soldiers outside the city gates, their hearts instantly turned cold. They had only escorted 20 children, yet they had already sent so many soldiers? How could they have known that Emperor Xianhuan was treading on thin ice? Afraid of any mishaps, they had sent heavy soldiers to escort him. He Xinjia's head immediately drooped. It was over. It was impossible for them to escape now. With so many pairs of eyes staring at them, even if she and the pretty boy grew wings, they would not be able to escape. Everyone boarded their flying spirit tools and sped in the direction of Li-Hen Palace. The children were initially a little reserved, but they quickly became familiar with each other. They were even faintly divided into 3 factions. One of them was a noble child led by the 9th Prince Xian Yuanxue, while the other faction was a commoner child. A little boy named Deng Qianyuan was the leader. As for He Xinjiu and Di Baiming, they were pushed aside and became the 3rd faction. Both sides had tried to get the 2 of them to join, but He Xinjiu had arrogantly rejected them. As a result, the 2 of them became the 3rd faction with honor. Because of Leader Zhang's care for the 2 of them, although those children isolated He Xinjiu and a certain respected figure, they did not dare to openly bully the 2 of them. Yun Chujie was not a child. She scoffed at such childish behavior. If she had the time, she would rather tease her gigolo. After walking for about half a day, the flying spirit tool landed on the ground. He Xinjiu could not help but wonder, why did it land so suddenly? What happened? After a while, more children boarded the flying spirit tool. Yun Chujie listened to a few words and immediately understood. These children were selected from the other cities of the Juntiantian kingdom. That's right, it was impossible to only choose from the capital city. The children from other cities naturally had to participate in the election. However, the number of children chosen from other cities was obviously less than the number chosen from the capital city. This was understandable. The people with high spiritual power in the Juntiantian kingdom were basically all gathered in the capital city. There were constantly new children joining. When they left the Juntiantian kingdom, the number of children had already risen from 20 to 100. The children quickly joined Xian Yuanxue and Deng Qianyuan's camp. Only He Xinjiu and Di Baiming were still leisurely wandering outside. He Xinjiu tried several times to escape when the flying spiritual device landed, but she failed. Fortunately, she was smart enough to not be discovered by others. This guy could only say to a certain god in a low voice, "Prince Charming, it seems that we can only hope that we will be eliminated or wait for you to recover your spiritual power." Compared to He Xinjiu, Di Baiming was much calmer. He lightly said, Yun Chujie. After He Xinjiu had thought things through, she immediately let go of herself. Every day she would either eat, sleep, or touch a certain someone. A certain someone had tried to stop her a few times but to no avail, so she couldn't be bothered with her. After all, she was only touching her small hands, touching her face and secretly kissing him a few times. That was all. A few days later, the flying spirit tool landed again. He Xinjiu thought that she had arrived at the Li-Hate Palace. But who would have thought that after disembarking from the flying spirit tool, she would discover that there was a huge courtyard not far away. Could this be the Li-Hate Palace? Wasn't this a little too rustic? Just as He Xinjiu was thinking about this, Leader Zhang had everyone stand in a row and brought them to the entrance of the courtyard. Yun Chujie then saw a plaque on the door with 4 big words written on it. Academy Selection. Academy Selection? What the hell was this? Could it be that in order to select the so-called inner court disciples, they had to go to school first before they could select a suitable candidate? Was he crazy? Leader Zhang took the token given to him by the national master and handed it to the guard at the door. One of the guards took the token and walked in. A moment later, a middle-aged man walked out from inside. His attitude was not bad, but one could see that he had a faintly superior attitude. Leader Zhang naturally did not dare to have any objections. After giving some instructions, he left with his men. Before leaving, Leader Zhang looked at He Xinjiu and Di Baiming with encouragement. His intention was self-evident. Naturally, he hoped that they could be selected in the end. He Xinjiu's feelings toward Leader Zhang were complicated. In short, it was just one sentence. Fuck, good intentions do bad things. The middle-aged man glanced at the children and said coldly, "From now on, your performance will determine whether you will be selected or not. Therefore, if anyone is eliminated, don't blame me for not reminding him." Yun Chujiu was delighted. If that was the case, that would be great. She was looking forward to being eliminated. It would be great if she could just cause some trouble. Therefore, the other children all lined up and walked inside obediently. Only He Xinjiu was jumping around and teasing Di Baiming behind her from time to time. This guy silently shouted in his heart, "Eliminate me. Eliminate me. Come and eliminate me quickly." Unfortunately, the middle-aged man only glanced at the two of them and did not say anything. He Xinjiu felt stifled. Was this person blind? Why didn't he eliminate her and the gigolo? After entering the courtyard, Yun Chujiu realized that the courtyard looked bigger than the outside. There were many courtyards inside, and after a few twists and turns, they were brought to a very large courtyard. There were 3 words written on the door of the courtyard: the Juntian Courtyard. As the name implied, this courtyard was probably prepared for the children of the Juntian Kingdom. These few days, all of you will be living and studying in the Juntian Academy. In the end, only 10 of you will be left behind. Just now, number 19 Little Treasure and number 20 Dabao were playing around, and each of you will be deducted 1 point. Each of you will start with 100 points. If the points are deducted completely, you will be directly eliminated, the middle-aged man said coldly. Yun Chujiu cursed in her heart. Fuck, only 1 point was deducted? You should deduct more points. He Xinjiu pondered in her heart. She had to work harder and cause more trouble. Naturally, the points would be deducted quickly. This way, she and the gigolo could be sent back to the Juntian Kingdom. The middle-aged man continued, "I'm the chief instructor of the Juntian Academy. You can call me Instructor Lu Jiaoxi. There will be other instructors to teach you the lessons you need to learn. Now the men and women will stand separately. I want to assign you a dormitory." The children stood in 2 rows obediently. Only He Xinjiu stood foolishly in the boys' row. Her fingers were still clutching Di Baiming's clothes as if she would not let go of him. Instructor Lu Jiaoxi frowned. "Number 19, what's wrong with you? Didn't you hear what this instructor said? Quickly stand on the girl's side." He Xinjiu sobbed. I just want to be with my brother. We siblings will never be separated." Instructor Lu Jiaoxi's frown deepened. The children who were selected had gone through preliminary selection. How could such a noisy little girl be chosen? He Xinjiu saw Instructor Lu Jiaoxi's gloomy expression and shouted in her heart, "Deduct points. Deduct points." It was best to deduct 100 points all at once. Instructor Lu said coldly, "Deduct 1 more point on the 19th. Now go to the girls' team immediately or continue to deduct points." He Xinjiu acted as if she did not hear him and hugged Di Baiming's waist tightly. "I don't care. I want separate from my brother anyway." Di Baiming was secretly pinched by He Xinjiu, so he could only agree stiffly, "We siblings will not separate." The rest of the children gloated at the 2 of them. These 2 were really courting death. Even if they were not eliminated this time, they would still lose a lot of points. After a moment, Instructor Lu Jiaoxi said coldly, 10 points will be deducted for each of the 19th and 20th. After Instructor Lu Jiaoxi finished speaking, he did not force Yun Chujiu to go to the girls' side. Instead, he began to allocate the dormitories. He calculated in his heart that the little girl would soon realize how inconvenient it was to be with a boy. Moreover, she was now a deviant, so the siblings would definitely be ostracized. When that time came, she would naturally give in. 10 people shared a dormitory. In Yun Chujiu's dormitory, other than the siblings, the remaining 8 people were all boys. Coincidentally, all 8 of them were Xian Yuanzuo's group. The 8 of them exchanged glances. They had long disliked these two little ones. Previously, with Leader Zhang's protection, they were unable to teach them a lesson. Now that there was finally an opportunity, they would be taught a lesson. Instructor Lu Jiaoxi said some things to take note of, and then let the children return to their respective rooms. Yun Chujio dragged Di Baiming and stayed in the courtyard for a while before entering the dormitory at a leisurely pace. The 8 people in the dormitory each occupied a bed, and the 2 beds at the entrance were piled with sundries. It was obvious that they wanted to make things difficult for He Xinjiu and Di Baiming. One of the fatties said arrogantly, "Hey, you two will be responsible for serving us from now on. The water for washing our faces and feet is all your business. As for the place to sleep, just sleep on the floor. In this way you and your sister will not be separated, ha." Panda N0, V1. The other 7 boys also laughed strangely. They were generally 2 years older than He Xinjiu, so they did not put the 2 little ones in their eyes at all. Di Baiming's little face was expressionless, and it was hard to tell whether he was happy or angry. He Xinjiu, on the other hand, began to giggle. She did not want to bully the little ones with the big ones, but since these brats were looking for death, she could not be blamed. Just use them to deduct points and get eliminated early. When the boys saw Yun Chujio smiling happily, they could not help but look at each other suspiciously. Could this little girl be a fool? Panda N0, V1. The little fatty curled his lips. Don't tell me you didn't understand what I just said? What are you smiling about? Yun Chujio smiled and took a few steps forward until she was in front of the little fatty. Then she raised her little arm and jumped up to slap the little fatty twice. Although the little fatty had become smaller, his spiritual power had not decreased. Although he had only used less than 10% of his strength, he had still slapped the little fatty several times. The little fatty's face instantly swelled up like a pig's head. The little fatty was a little confused at the beginning. After he reacted, he scolded angrily, "Stupid girl, you dare to hit me?" Yun Chujio curled her lips. "I just hit you. Do you still want to fight back? Let me tell you, if you hit me you will lose points. Anyway, I have already lost so many points. I don't care. Come on, hit me." The little fatty's raised hand suddenly stopped. Although he did not know the rules of the June Heaven Academy, he would definitely lose points in a fight. He could not ruin his future just because of a moment of anger. Seeing that the little fatty did not dare to fight back, Yun Chujio immediately took out a whip from her storage ring and swung it on the ground a few times. She said arrogantly, "Hurry up and empty the 2 beds in the innermost part, or I will not be polite. If anyone is not convinced, come and fight me." The 8 boys stared with their mouths agape at the little girl who was holding the whip. She was obviously not as tall as them, but she made them feel that this little thing was very scary. The boys who originally occupied the 2 beds looked at each other and gritted their teeth to vacate the beds. They thought to themselves that they would tell Instructor Lu Jiaoxi about this little treasure bullying them the next day. At that time they might even kick her out directly. Seeing that they had freed up the beds, Yun Chujio walked in with her short legs and held a certain someone's hand. This guy pointed at the boys with his whip and scolded, "Are you pigs? Don't you know how to clean up? Hurry up and clean up the house. Whoever is lazy, let's fight one-on-one." The boys looked at each other but no one moved. They thought to themselves, this little girl was just saying that. Did she really dare to be enemies with all of them? They were clearly too naive. Seeing that no one moved, He Xinjiu raised her whip and lashed it at the boy closest to her. That little boy could not avoid He Xinjiu's whip and he was lashed until he cried out in pain. When the other children saw this, they immediately became terrified. One by one they quickly began to clean up. After dinner the children went to bed to rest. If it weren't for Yun Chujio, this little devil with a black heart, they would definitely play around and rest. Now they were afraid that Yun Chujio would find fault with them, so they were all very well behaved. Yun Chujio blinked her eyes and did not return to her own bed. Instead she climbed onto Di Baiming's bed with both hands and feet. Di Baiming was too lazy to say anything because it would be useless to say anything. He allowed He Xinjiu to reach out her evil claws and hug him. He Xinjiu ravished a certain someone for a while. This guy leaned into the ear of a certain someone and whispered, Prince Charming, do you like this kind of childhood sweetheart tone? Dee Biming's cold little face suddenly turned red. He scolded coldly, go to sleep. If you talk again, go back to your own bed. Yun Chujio curled her lips and pinched a certain someone's arm. Only then did she yawn and fall asleep soundly. A certain someone covered the blanket that Yun Chujio had kicked away. In the darkness, he pondered for a long time before closing his eyes. The next day before dawn, all the children in the room had already woken up. Especially the little fatty with a swollen face and the boy who had been whipped by Yun Chujio. They had finished washing up early. They wished that they could see Instructor Lu Jiaoxi right away. They would expose Yun Chujio's evil deeds and then chase her out. Yun Chujio was awakened by the noise of the children. This fellow's anger from waking up immediately erupted. He said fiercely, all of you shut the fuck up. If anyone disturbs my sleep, I'll kill him. Those children were stunned at first and then they were furious beyond belief. This little girl was really too overbearing. However, her good days were about to come to an end. They only needed to endure for a little longer and perseverance was victory. Finally, the sound of assembly came from outside. The children rushed out impatiently. Only Hei Xinju was still lying lazily on the bed. If she was late, she would be deducted points, right? If that was the case, then she would be late. This guy blinked his eyes, hugged Dee Biming's neck and said slyly, we haven't treated you for a long time. Come, little sister will treat you. Be good. While Dee Biming was in a daze, Yun Chujio's lips had already kissed him. He might as well just leave it at that. What if it was effective against the cold poison, right? At this moment outside the house, the children had already lined up. Instructor Lu Jiaoxi glanced at the group and noticed that one group was missing 2 people. He could not help but frown. Group 4, why are there 2 people missing? When the little fatty heard Instructor Lu Jiaoxi's question, he immediately found his backbone. With a sobbing voice he said, Instructor Lu Jiaoxi, the ones who are missing are De Bao and Xiao Bao. That Xiao Bao beat me up for no reason last night and now he is late for bed. You have to make a decision for me. The boy who was whipped by Yun Chujio also stood up and echoed, Instructor Lu Jiaoxi, that Xiao Bao even beat me with a whip. My back is still burning. Instructor Lu Jiaoxi had actually seen the little fatty's strange behavior just now, but he definitely did not expect that he was actually beaten by that little treasure. That little treasure was 2 to 3 years younger than the little fatty. How did she do it? He probably joined hands with that big treasure? Instructor Lu Jiaoxi was really a little surprised. He originally thought that big treasure and little treasure would be ostracized and bullied by the other children, but he did not expect that she would instead bully others. Instructor Lu Jiaoxi looked at a guard standing at the side of the team and said, bring the 2 of them out. Moreover, the little girl's brother had not made a move. No matter how one looked at it, that little thing was more powerful than this little girl. Hei Xinjiu glanced at them and then said with a smile, I don't eat people. Why are you so afraid? Tell me, which one of you still wants to fight the baby one-on-one? Those children shook their heads like rattle drums. What a joke. They did not want to be as miserable as Lu Dali. If they fought with her, they would only be tortured. Seeing this, Yun Chujio took out her whip and swung it on the ground a few times. Then she said with a smile, it seems that you are convinced now? Those children nodded repeatedly. Even if they were not convinced, they did not dare to say it. Yun Chujio touched her chin and revealed a bright smile on her small face. Since you are convinced, you can call me your king from now on. Do you hear me? The king? What the hell is the king? Just as the children were in a daze, they heard the sound of whips cracking. They immediately stuttered, yes, the king. The corner of the eyes of a certain person with an indifferent expression twitched slightly. Was this little scoundrel addicted to bullying children? Could he still have some integrity? If such a scoundrel had his own children in the future, he would probably be the mother of a child. A certain man's thoughts suddenly stopped and his face turned hot. He quickly crossed his legs to cultivate and stopped paying attention to Hei Xinjia's movements. Hei Xinjiu asked the children to stand in 2 rows, then she said with her hands behind her back, "Come. We'll teach you a song. The title of the song will be 'The King Sent Me to Patrol the Mountains.' This song will be the group song for our 4th group in the future. Do you hear me?" The children felt as if their hearts were going crazy. What the hell was this? However, when they looked at the little fatty who was sitting on the ground, and then at the whip in a certain Jio's hand, they immediately nodded without any backbone. Hei Xinjiu nodded in satisfaction and began to teach the naughty children how to sing. When the children heard the lyrics, they were even more afraid. What did she mean by catching a monk for dinner? Was this little girl a cannibal? The more the children thought about it, the more scared they became. They forced themselves to sing a happy song with a sense of horror. Hei Xinjiu did not care whether they were scared or not. After she had tortured them enough, this guy waved his claws and let them go. Then he moved closer to a certain lord who was cultivating. He said with a smile, "This king is going to bed. My beloved concubine, come with me." Hearing Yun Chujia's words, the children were all dumbfounded. This little pervert even flirted with their own elder brother? A certain someone ignored Hei Xinjiu and continued to cultivate as if he had not heard her. Hei Xinjiu pursed her lips and did not say anything else. Instead, she climbed into the bed and lay down on her side. Then she reached out her claws and hugged a certain someone's waist, rubbing her little head against it. A moment later, a helpless look appeared on the face of a certain king. He had no choice but to give up his meditation and lie on the outside of the bed. Hei Xinjiu immediately snuggled in the arms of a certain king and said happily, "Brother, what do you think of me as a king?" The certain king was silent for a moment before he spat out 2 words indifferently, "Childish." Hei Xinjiu pouted and said, "How is it childish? I have 8 subordinates now." A certain person said coldly, "What's the use of 8 useless people?" The 8 people, they also wanted to keep their dignity, okay? Chapter 3476 made a few random gestures. Everyone was shocked to discover that the first person to come out was actually that little girl. She had her hands behind her back and was leisurely. There were no signs of being beaten at all. Immediately after, that little girl's elder brother walked out with an indifferent expression, followed by those 8 people. Each and every one of them was extremely well behaved. What was going on? Were they stupid? They had such a good opportunity last night, but they actually didn't take care of these 2 little things. During breakfast, Xian Yuanzhua called the 8 children to the side and asked in puzzlement, "You didn't take revenge last night?" The 8 people looked at each other, and the little fatty said in a low voice, "Ninth Prince, that little girl is very strange. We can't beat her." Xian Yuanzhua, what kind of joke was this? That little girl was only about 5 or 6 years old, but they actually couldn't beat her? A bunch of trash. Xian Yuanzhua was born into the imperial family. Although he was only 9 years old, he was ruthless. He was now on par with Deng Qianyuan, so he had to find something to establish his authority. Only then would he be able to win over the other party's people. The greater his power was, the greater the chance of him staying in the Li Hate Palace in the end. He looked at Hei Xinjiu, who was receiving her breakfast, and a trace of ruthlessness appeared in his eyes. He lowered his voice and said, "Tonight I will bring people to your dormitory. Tonight, no matter what, I will beat up those 2 little things and avenge you." The little fatty's face immediately paled. "Ninth Prince, let's forget about it. They are not in our way. Why must we target them?" He was most likely afraid of being beaten up. He vaguely felt that even if the 9th Prince brought people to help them, they might, most likely 80%, still not be able to defeat that little pervert. Xian Yunzhua looked at him unhappily. "You're one of my people. Since you've been beaten up, I naturally have to help you vent your anger. There's no need to say more. At night, don't close the door. After the sky turns dark, it'll bring people over." The little fatty saw Xian Yuanzuo's gloomy expression and didn't dare to say anything. He unintentionally raised his head and saw that the little pervert was holding a bun in his hand. He was looking at Xian Yuanzhuo with a smile that made him shudder. The little fatty instantly felt bad. What was that little pervert smiling about? Could it be that he had guessed what they had said? If he had guessed it, why would she not only not be afraid but also smile? Xian Yuanzhua did not notice the little fatty's strange behavior and directly brought his people over to pick up breakfast. After the children had eaten breakfast, they took advantage of Instructor Yuan's absence and began to demonstrate the sword techniques they had learned the day before. Only He Xinjiao and Di Baiming, the two little ones, sat leisurely on the small horse carriage and basked in the sun. Of course, a certain lord originally did not want to sit on the small horse carriage, but he could not withstand He Xinjia's forceful pull and could only sit on the small horse carriage with a stiff face. When Instructor Yuan came, his gaze couldn't help but linger on the two small bodies for a moment, then he asked everyone to gather. After everyone gathered, they began the sword technique assessment in turn. Instructor Yuan's expression didn't show any emotions, nor did he make any comments. He just asked everyone to practice the sword technique in order. After a while it was He Xinjia's turn. He Xinjia walked to the front, took out a sword from her storage ring and started to draw randomly. The children sneered one after another. This little treasure would definitely lose points. She was simply drawing randomly. He Xinjia drew randomly a few times and then said with a smile, "Instructor Yuan, I didn't understand how you drew yesterday, so I just drew randomly a few times." Instructor Yuan didn't say anything. He asked her to go down and let Di Baiming come forward to practice his swordsmanship. Chapter 3477. Points deducted based on ability. Di Baiming was not as thick-skinned as Yun Chujiao. He did not even step out. He only said coldly, "I don't know how." The children were gloating even more. These two little things did not even step out. These two little things will definitely be deducted a lot of points. Based on this rate of deduction, these two little things will be eliminated very soon. Unexpectedly, Instructor Yuan still didn't say anything and let the other children continue practicing their swordsmanship. Finally, everyone finished practicing. Instructor Yuan glanced at everyone and said, "Except for number 19 and number 20, each person will lose 10 points. Everyone, He Xinjiao, Di Baiming." Immediately, someone asked indignantly, "Instructor Yuan, although the way we practice might be a little different from what you taught us yesterday, De Bao and Xiao Bao were just randomly practicing. Why did we lose points instead?" Instructor Yuan replied coldly, "Knowing is knowing. Not knowing is not knowing. Number 19 and number 20 at least have the courage to admit that they didn't learn the sword technique. They didn't mess it up like you did. A set of sword technique that was perfectly fine was ruined by you." He Xinjiao felt as if she was cursing a dog in her heart. Fuck, this works. If she had known this would happen, she would have imitated those devilish children and made a few decent gestures. It wasn't easy for her to use her ability to deduct some points, and in the blink of an eye she had returned to the same starting line. When the children heard Instructor Yuan's words, although they were still indignant, no one said anything. After all, a small arm couldn't twist a thigh, so they could only listen to the instructor's arrangements. The children originally thought that Instructor Yuan would continue to teach them the previous set of sword techniques, but they did not expect that Instructor Yuan would leave without saying anything. Fortunately, the head of the guards at the side said, "You guys have lunch first. There will be a new instructor coming to teach you in the afternoon." He Xinjiao ridiculed in her heart. What kind of trick was this? This was considered a test? There was a new instructor in the afternoon? Crazy. In the afternoon there was indeed a new instructor. The new instructor was an old man. This old man was even more lazy. He directly threw a few types of herbs to each group and then left. The crowd did not understand and could only carefully observe the herbs thrown to them, in case they could not pass the test the next day. Yun Chujiao originally planned to bring Di Baiming back to the dormitory, but the strange grass in her dantian was clamoring to eat those herbs. It was Guai Chao. Guai Chao was afraid of Di Baiming, so its clamor was restrained a lot.